for sound sleep. Right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast, episode 208. This week, we have a awesome guest who's been with us before, Brendan Strath of Spectrum King and BioCat Solutions. How's it going?
Good, man. What's happening on the podcast? What's going on? Like 208 episodes. That's a hell of a lot, brother.
Yeah, I actually tallied it up. We're well over 400 hours of content now, which is awesome. And I mean, some of the catalogs we have is really cool. And it's also funny to see like the spikes and which episodes get a lot of views from week to week. You can see like somebody has a discussion and reposts it somewhere, and all of a sudden an old episode gets tons and tons of views. It's kind of funny. So you have some of our best lighting ones for anyone who doesn't know were put on by Brendan back in the early days. The first 2 or 3 times you were on, you really dropped a ton of lighting knowledge, especially in regarding the kind of the differences between a lot of the different main lighting types that are out on the market, and really helped educate a lot of people the last couple of years. So
that's what the whole point of being passionate about something, you want to know more about it, is to get deep down the rabbit hole, so to speak, and figure out what's what. And if you're going to grow plants, you kind of have to study plants and see what they do like and don't like. And I'm amazed by some companies and people who just don't do that. They just think they can either borrow technology or read an article and say, well, this is what we're going to do. And until the rubber hits the road and you have live testing on real plants, they'll tell you all you need to know. And with technology changing so rapidly, the generation of LEDs used to be every couple of years. Now, we go through these weird turns where we have a couple of years, nothing really great happens, and wham, some really cool stuff comes out. And I want to study it, analyze it, see if it's true, test it, torture it. Does it hold up? Will it hold up? There's a new generation of LEDs that we were working with that we had some issues with because they're made differently. Doesn't sound like a big thing. However, they're made differently to make themselves significantly more susceptible to things people use in gardens. So they should be horticultural lights. It's something you find out when you try it. And you do a lab test and you go, oh, well, that's a fail. Next, what can we get this straight? Where's, get that output we want. And that's kind of an obsession. Clearly, I have stuck on wanting to make the best light we can make.
So I understand there's some crazy things going on with Cali law, and that actually was one of the reasons why I wanted to have you come on. And I thought maybe it'd be a good place to start off, and a good place to start off with our lighting discussion. Why don't you tell everybody first off what they're proposing in California and what the implications of that would be, and then how lights like yours and your light specifically can help with that problem.
Well, let's just imagine California's got somewhere close to 40 million people in the state, and in the past couple of years, a few 100,000 more lights have gone on to grow marijuana, and they're just killing the grid in a state that already has electrical fire issues and other things happening. The state of California goes, we have to make this all safer, and we have to protect our grids. So starting January 2023, you can't grow with bulbs anymore in California. You have to grow with LED. So I was shocked when I saw it too. I thought that would never happen, but here we are. That's what's going to be. You're going to have to grow with LED. And I'm looking forward to, that, just because the simple savings and the longevity of the product, it pays for itself. And we're at the point now where we can put out more light than a bulb with a lot less power and a lot better quality light for plants. So the old stories of they don't do this, they don't do that, or it's not bright enough, or it's the wrong color, et cetera, those arguments don't hold water anymore. It's time for that change to happen, a big paradigm shift.
So they're proposing that all HPS and HID lights be banned for commercial production. Now, would this also include induction lighting and other stuff, or plasmas, or?
Well, not that people would jump back in a plasma train, but plasmas kind of put themselves out of the mix with some weird behaviors and also longevity issues and heat issues. look at it this way: a double-ended bulb operates around 600 degrees Fahrenheit when it's turned up to 1,000 or 1,150 watts, like most DEs are used. Well, that's just a crazy amount of heat. When you consider an LED fixture, if it's used wrong, might get up to 140, 150 degrees Fahrenheit, not 600. And it's also not emitting all that extra bandwidth of light that the lighting companies, bulb manufacturers don't want you to see. You know, measuring that 400 to 700 nanometers of PAR, which they call photosynthetically active radiation, that's the visual spectrum. And that's all people wanted you to see, because they think, well, this is better light for what we can see. Well, if we're only measuring what humans can see, and plants don't really care what we can see, they want the light they need. So if we're giving them, depending on which scale you look at, one scale says 280 to 850, one scale says, 300 or 350 to 800. I'm more believer that plants really do use 280 to 850 nanometers. So, more UV than we can see, and a lot more into the far reds, but not an extreme ratio. Bulbs, if you were to measure, there's new spectroradiometers that can measure 200 nanometers to 1150 nanometers. And the beauty of that is you can see where you have some dangerous UV and wrong ratios. So some bulbs give that off. But the red, when you see this, a regular bulb chart, and you look at, you pretty much have a middle finger of that bright, flash orange light that a bulb puts out. That's really its dominant bandwidth. And you think that's the most intense thing it puts out. But if you saw that spectrum after 850 nanometers, it shoots up like a stock market in a bull. It just goes way up and just keeps going. It's insane how much excess heat that is, but more importantly, how much more air conditioning you have to use to mitigate the damage that's doing to your plants. It's a vicious cycle. So they use more power, but you need more power to cool them. And suddenly your production costs in an expanding market where it's becoming a commodity, whether we like it or not, this is where it's headed. You got to work smarter, and you have to have your production costs in check. Longevity, maintenance, simplicity of use, LED wins. I don't care if it's induction, I don't care if it's plasma, fluorescent, anything else you can come up with that's bulb origin. That technology has seen a glorious run for a lot longer than anyone thought, but the time has come for it to move on.
Yeah, we also had Roger joining us. How's it going, Roger?
Going good. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good deal. Hey, good to see everybody. Yeah, it's just got a chance to pop in here for a few minutes and see what's going on and say howdy do, and howdy from Texas.
Been a hot one this week, eh?
Yeah, very hot, and it's going to get hotter. I mean, yeah, we've had heat advisories all week, all weekend coming up. So yeah, it's been terribly hot. Going to continue to be hot, and that's where we use our potassium silicate to help our plants continue to grow well and deal with that heat stress. So yeah, it's coming up quick.
Oh yeah. And I know a lot of the people out here in Oklahoma and some of the hemp growers in Texas too I've been talking to have all switched to basically working nighttime. The plants are still in veg. Lights at night's not really going to be a problem. So a lot of people are starting at 2, 3 a.m. and finishing up at 11 or 12 rather than sitting out there and suffering.
Smart.
Yeah, you have to in that kind of heat. You'll literally die of heat stroke in the field if you don't do that. Like it's not even optional. And in an aquaponic greenhouse with the extra humidity, even with cooling, it's still pretty oppressive in there in the mid-afternoon. So while the plants don't mind because the VPD is perfectly right.
Yeah, right. That balance is there, but
not very good for human VPD at all. Your ability to cool down is severely hampered for sure. So tell us more about some of the other cool things you guys have been up to at Spectrum King. I know you guys have been, especially with the different things going on in the world, your demand for lights has kind of gone through the roof.
The challenge of getting things certified in other parts of the world is difficult, because that's everyone has different sets of rules, and some of the rules are accepted here. So if you get this standard, they won't give it to you, but they'll accept it. So you can then, you don't have to provide a whole other list of things for it. But if you make any change, like in Europe, if you make a change to something, you got to start all over again, you know, for your certifications and stuff. So that's kind of a headache. And in every country, though they're part of the European Union, it's not 100% understood by the Europeans, nor is it uniform. Like I had a project in Denmark. You know, I saw lights in the UK, you know, all for years, no problems. But Denmark has all kinds of local rules that aren't even federal rules to deal with things. It keeps us on our toes that way. But the Europeans are definitely more prone to using new technology because they're starting off. You know, I know a lot of Americans that have gone over to Europe to run these grows. I have a bunch of American guys that went to Macedonia, been with the Greece, they've gone to Poland, Germany, France. The French government's going to get their act together, I think, next year, and then they'll be doing cannabis too, more openly. Spain obviously has always been awesome, and so is the Netherlands. But they have high taxes, man. So it's harder to sell to the small grower in that environment. Commercial growers world over are taking over. That's what it seems like to me.
So what are some of the things that you guys have been working on as far as different lights or stuff that's really been kind of, you know, going off the shelves lately?
Well, interesting enough, you know, obviously the bulk of what we do is commercial cannabis farms and things, but we also have a lot of people growing food, and they're getting more into better quality, locally grown, fresh produce and things. So, you know, vertical farms doing things that way. And I like studying. The fun part is they give me a list of plants, you know, and then I research, you know, what's their normal DLI, what's their normal angle of sun, what's their time of year, and try to recreate the dominant bandwidths of where they really come from. And the best compliments I get is like the guys say, this tastes like my grandmother used to grow in the backyard. This is how it's supposed to be, you know? And I'm like, yes, now you understand why the quality of light is so important. To get that real flavors and stuff, you got to have it. It might be an obsession. Maybe I'm brain damaged, but I just want to, I like figuring things out and making them work better.
Well, and the cannabis people are so detail oriented about even such any little minor change, and they study the 30 different ways on how it could happen. And people don't quite do that as much with lettuce or basil or tomatoes. How many lettuce
farmers have you had a half-hour debate over a milligram of CalMag per gallon, man? That's all I'm asking you to do. You know?
And if anyone out there is looking for good lights for their vegetable grow for aquaponics,
sure.
you know, Spectrum King does make the best ones out there. They make everything from stuff to do 3x3s all the way up to, actually, I'll let you take. You can.
What I'm really, really happy with, because there's a lot of people starting out to grow their own food at home, and they also grow some of their own medicine. They don't need a whole artillery array of high-powered things. And our new CC140 closet case 140-watt light, the next generation we're putting out right now, it's smaller in overall stature, and it puts out literally 40% more light at the same power as the previous generation. Did a whole lot of homework, and we, you know, the team here, we banged around trials and tribulations, and they're out now, the MLH and the CC, and they're kicking ass. I love those lights. The whole idea is to make it, every generation we're trying to do is make it put out more light with the same or less power consumption. Better thermal management, better spectral output. That's every generation that we're trying to do. I'm not going to put out another light and change the color of the body. So you say, oh, it comes in this color now, when it's not an improvement. Every step forward has to be an improvement on the previous generation. And then with the technology for guys using controllers, you know, 4 years ago, if you had a big farm, your controller options were like 3 brands of big farming ones, and I'll leave their names out. We all know who they are. Then somebody like Trollmaster comes along, makes a simple controller that can program entire banks of lights and CO2 and everything else that you could program yourself in like 5 minutes. It costs you a few $100. So you had to spend $100,000 on a control system 4, 5, 6 years ago. You can spend less than $1,000 and have better control. So that's just totally opened up the orchid farmers, the home grower vegetable people. They just program their stuff even your people, you know, the fish farmers, man, they're loving the fact that they can micro control everything to make it just so. When, you know, if your water temperature is a few degrees off with your fish, you know right away something's up. Your nose tells you, your eyes tell you, the fish tell you. But when you get things right, you get that stupid grin on your face because everything just works. You know what
It
I mean?
was funny. It was funny the other day we added a second blower in the greenhouse just to back up what you're saying, and all of a sudden we had double the aeration, and the fish, just to adjust for the extra aeration, were producing more slime coat because they're rubbing in it with the bubbles and stuff. You could actually, for the first time, when you walk by the fish tank, smell the fish because you could smell the slime coat bubbles, right? So it was just kind of funny that you could very suddenly, even just a minor change in the aeration level was instantly noticeable. So
it's all the fine dance, you know, a few degrees here, a little oxygenation there. I mean, it changes everything just with your feed. Even if you're doing a foliar spray with your fish stuff at the temperature, the plants will react to it at a different temperature, in a different way. It probably is an OCD problem for both of us to focus like that, but that's what you have to do. And you know, some of the growers I've taught, you know, some veterans and people that called in and say, "Hey, man, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I don't know what to do. Can you help me?" I'm like, okay, what do you want to know? I don't care about sharing knowledge because I think, imagine back in the day, and I guess I would say this to be more Roger and myself because he appears to be in my age bracket. We couldn't even open our damn mouths. You couldn't say. We had all kinds of stupid baseball signals and stuff. You couldn't say what's up. You know, back in Philly or back in New York City in the day.
Yeah, that's how I got into this, because I was selling 8 and 12,000-watt reef tank light setups, with ventilation systems and carbon scrubbers to make sure you don't get bad air for your coral tanks,
sure
right?
The air doesn't smell like fish in there, so you want to clean it. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to make sure you get rid of that bad fish smell.
Mm-hmm. All that stuff, man. Even guys doing outdoor and then freaking out when they got into mid flowering, get really aromatic, and people tripping balls, and people come in and steal your plants because it wasn't like I lived in the boonies. I lived just north of New York City as a kid growing up, so this was not an easy game to compete in, And as time went on, and technology advanced and then became okay to be a grower, and then when the laws changed in all these states, the past 3 years has been an amazing explosion of technology, sharing of information, advances in genetics, all the fun stuff, which makes it really cool to be in this niche that we're in now.
Awesome. Any other new products you guys have aside from the closet case 104?
From the bottom up, you have the CC and the MLH, the 100s, 140s. The 140s, I'm very, very happy with. Much better performance, and they're going to be more cost effective soon. The 402, I'm graduating to a 402 plus. I'm not changing the body style yet, so I'm not going to modify it to the next full generational change. But I found, like I said, with new diodes and things coming out, a better formula to keep our patented spectrum but get more intensity out of it. So we're going to be doing those. Those are coming out literally in August, so just a few weeks away. Same for a 602, improvement on the same thing. We get a little bit more intensity with it. We're keeping our patented spectrum. So that's going to be probably more the end of August to September. The low pro flower is doing well, but that's weird. It's the light we put out, and we didn't know what to expect. And it seems like when commercial farmers get their hands on it, vertical farmers for cannabis, then it just goes like it's like a flood. You can't find one online, can't see in the store, but I can't make enough of them, because when commercial guys try it against other linear fixtures, it just knocks them backwards. That they don't understand. Other companies that spend $25 million on marketing, we don't. We don't play that way. We just make products that work and deal with real growers, and the real growers tell their friends. That's been, to me, the best compliment and the best marketing you can get is when real world experience from real people using them.
Awesome. So what what are you guys doing these days for your greenhouse lights? Are you doing for your supplementals?
Right.
There's a lot of people that are doing greenhouses that listen to the podcast.
We have with a 602 GH for greenhouse. We have thousands of those out there working in greenhouses already. multiple thousands of them out in the field. And I'm working on a new linear one, because what I'm trying to do is find a way to get more directed light with less of a visual footprint obstruction. So there's less shadows cast from the fixture itself. And with the recent development of new diodes that I mentioned earlier, I can really get some serious output from something that might be as less than 4 inches wide and maybe 3.5 feet long. That's going to be putting out more light than any fixture that's ever been on the market before. That's my project for this. I tend to have it released by the end of September if I get it right.
Awesome. That's
And
very cool.
with the remote power systems on top of that, you know, this way, back in the day, if we plugged in a 240 volt, a 600 watt fixture, we're using about 2.5 amps of power, right? Well, if you go 480 volt 3-phase, that knocks it down even more. So on a commercial scale with huge thousands of light grows, these 3-phase fixtures with lower amperage just completely reduce your amp loads. So guys don't have to upgrade their panels and add more circuits, because our systems, you could have one breaker per rack unit that handles 24,000 watts of light. So instead of having, you know, multiple outlets and multiple legs being broken off, all these extra circuitry and wires pulled, we can completely get a place set up way faster, way cheaper, and more efficiently with our high-end, high-power system. So that's really the stuff we nerd out on and get going the most these days.
Awesome. So what are some of the other things you've been up to? You got all kinds of cool stuff you've been doing. Well,
being that the mission is to find a way to grow the cleanest, healthiest, best weed possible. The lighting sides of things, clearly, I'm kind of stuck in that, but also on the microbial sides, and with BioCat solutions, with the more product that I'm getting behind, anything that can keep your lines clean, give you better roots, give you better nutrient cycling, and overall plant health. And you've seen some of the roots that Moore gets with your own eyes. I mean, you can't fake that. You know, there's no synthetic chemicals. There's no things which you may have to worry about later in life for testing. It's as simple as a recipe of living microbials with a mild nutrient solution to keep them going that people didn't think was possible, yet it's real. And it can stay alive for a few months on a shelf. And with big commercial farms, we're making it so you brew it right there in your own farm, fresh, and use it daily. So there's no shipping of massive liquids back and forth, because with this pandemic going on, shipping rates are insane. I mean, international shipping rates are completely insane, but even domestic rates have gone through the roof. So these guys that were getting liquid nutrients and liquid additives, I mean, their production costs are going way up, and their price per pounds are stable or dropping. You got to find your savings where you can in your production management. And you know, the cost of product per square foot, we kill it, because we've already proven with it, you get more THC and you get better yields, but you also have a cleaner system. So you have less work to do between runs. So that's why we call it more, because it does more.
The biggest thing I've noticed is it made the roots really white within about 3 to 4 days of adding it to the system. And when we used it, we were adding it directly to the MBBR, which is a good place to just, you know, if you're doing all your microbial inoculation, it really is the best place to add it.
I like that I have guys who use 128 position aero cloners. You know, they put out a little fine mist, they miss roots. Well, those things are notorious algae farms underneath the hood. And one of the guys that first was using it, I couldn't get him on the phone. It's not like growers answer their phone a lot. You know, sometimes you just can't reach the guys. So it ends up being a week or two goes by. I get him on the phone. I go, so what's up with your test of the clones? He goes, oh man, it reminds me of the mountains. And I'm like, what does? He goes, when I open the cloner using more, I get that fresh mountain scent like after a rain. But when I use the other one, I open my nose and I'm almost puke, because the algae is so, you know, prevalent in there. When you have the right balance of microbials, they won't allow that stuff to exist. Even certain pathogens, other people consider pathogens, we have to qualify that. When used appropriately with the ratio of beneficials and aerobic bacteria, they'll wipe out biofilm and recycle it back into available plant food, and the rest will eat themselves. Where's the loss in that? I mean, Have you ever opened a feed line that was 1,000 feet long and saw that black toothpaste sludge come out that smells like beyond any, may I never smell it again, you know? More can break that stuff down. You could take that line, soak it for 48 hours. One, it's really destroyed by never being properly cleaned, and it'll come out looking like new PVC. It'll literally it'll break it all down, free it so you can flush it out and get back to work. You can soak emitters in it overnight and use them the next day. You know, some of these 2 GPH and 4 BH emitters the guys are using for their drip systems and slow feeders, when you're using your teas and a lot of other microbial life, they gunk up pretty good. You know, salts and things gunk them up. More breaks all that down. That's what's so cool about it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, we had really good luck with it here in Oklahoma, and it's been one of the better things. We use that along with recharge to really get our roots super healthy and you know, eliminate a lot of our issues.
What I like about it is, you know, yes, it does. It helps from the beginning to the end of the plant life. But I know some growers that use it for specific things only, like, and they use it with less than the dose I would recommend to use it in. But they've, like, a lot of really well-established growers, as you mentioned, they have their recipe down. They don't want to mess with it out of fearing it's going to mess with their juju. So they baby step little things. But over time, I watch their order of the products climbing, because they're saying, yes, it does this too. Yes, it does that too. You know what? I'm thinking about trying this now. I'm like, well, hey, why don't you just take a little side room with a couple lights, or a little bay, one bay of a greenhouse with its own reservoir, and, you know, have at it. Dry nutrient farmers that mix their own and then, you know, have the dosatron, they're making it like, you know, super precise systems. They're worried about those fine micron filters in their lines and everything, and it got those guys to do a double take when they used more, and it didn't do anything negative. It actually cleaned even the fine mesh, you know, 50 micron filter wasn't getting blocked up. They couldn't wrap their heads around it. I'm trying to explain to them that archaeotes and protobacteria, you could fit like 100 of them on one bacteria. They're that small. So, you know, you're not dealing with massive fungi that are dying in solution and get hit to a thing and just, you know, muck it up. You're not dealing with super complex compounds that, you know, why back in the day when, like, you had a 2-part or a 3-part nutrient, why they had them in 2 or 3 parts? Because if you mix them together, it'd be a clump of gunk at the bottom of a bottle. Well, when you mix them in a reservoir and you stir them up and they get agitated, they stay in suspension and it looks peaceful for a while. But when they get in a feed line, they sit there. That's settling at the bottom. Every time you turn the feed off, that stuff's settling in the bottom of your feed line. And then if there's any pathogens in there, you're getting the biofilm, which goes up around the top. And over time, it's like it's blocking an artery, like a human eating junk food, you know? It's just closing off that line, and then your flow goes down. And then on a long feed run, you don't notice it right away, but after 3 runs, you're like, why is the last table not getting enough feed? Then you open one of those junction points and you vomit because that stench is. If you never smelled that, anyone listening, one day you may have to, and you'll understand why Stephen and I cringe when we think about it. It's unforgettable stench that you won't.
There is one smell that is worse. The only smell that I've smelled that's worse, and it's from working in the pet trade. And if you have a reptile tank and the crickets crawl up into the water containers, like chicken style water containers, ferment under a heat lamp in there, that concentrated water of dead fermented crickets is gotta be like, it'll make anyone that hasn't worked in the pet trade vomit instantaneously. I assure you. Yeah, it's a stink bomb from hell. That's for damn sure.
It's you have to have pretty thick skin and know how to ignore your own sinuses to be around that, for sure.
So what are some of the other trends that you're seeing quite a bit of working with different companies doing lighting and different markets and things? What's the different trends you're seeing?
Well, when the virus came out earlier this, you know, obviously it seems like a lifetime ago, but it's only been 3-4 months up with this country with the lockdown and stuff happening. There was a UV like bandwagon. Everything has to have UV and do this and do that. And I'm like, do you understand? It's all like any good drug. UV is all about the dose. Which type of UV, A, B, or C, and the doses make a massive, massive difference. And humans and UV, lower UVB and UVC just don't mix. Bad idea. Don't do it. And there's been some stop sale on some products that people, I need UV this. So yeah, you're giving yourself skin cancer by using that thing to kill bacteria in your hands. Maybe you don't want to do that. A light that you can't see that can really change.
I love the UVC wands. Oh yeah, you can totally just wand your shit. Oh, wait a minute. Like, this is the stuff they used to kill viruses. Like, you need to wear like heavy eye protection, no exposed skin, like, full IPM
What people
or
don't
PPM or PP.
Any light,
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, any light from 450 nanometers of the blues and down is just horrifically bad for human eyes and skin. The blues in balance with reds and like natural sunlight, you're okay. But if you got to somewhere where there's like suddenly there's 6,500 K and you're on a hill skiing and your brain just hurts, even when you have sunglasses on, because that ratio of blue is wrong and it's just too much for your head to take. That's when you know that you have to have that type of eye protection. It's the same thing with the UV stuff. You can't see it, doesn't mean it's not there. Just like the extreme infrared, you're squinting and you don't know why. It's not the intensity, it's those bandwidths you can't see that are really hurting your eyes, whether it's one end of the spectrum or the other. So making a right light for a job and understanding what those bookends are good for or not good for, you can taper and sculpt and trial and error get what we did, which is a spectrum which we know is safe for humans and really awesome for plants. Once you get your plants growing the way you want to, then you start looking for ways to improve. More trichomes, more this, more that.
Can you break down, so we've talked about this before, but can you break down the whole UVA versus UVB and what they're important for, and then how they can help with your resin production, but then also how UVB, is it UVA or B, will actually reduce CBD significantly in production on that, which is something that I've found noticeable in my own testing.
Well, what's ironic with CBD and THC ratios in plant, you could do a lot more if you know when to actually harvest for the specific results you want. The irony being is that when if you're trying to keep the highest THC, you gotta kind of harvest the crops when your ambers are really early on in the game. Not the more ambers you see, the less THC you have, the more CBD you have, especially if the strain has that CBG, CBN. You get a lot of balances, but UVA and UVB in small doses stimulate the plant's secondary metabolite production, aka the plant's own sunscreen, which happens to be what we want more of for humans as consumption. So knowing the right dose to stimulate that production without damaging that production is key. If someone says, I'm just going to throw a bunch of UV and that's going to make a killer. Well, if you throw a bunch of UV in a fixture, it's only killer if you use it appropriately, meaning like it's a systemic response in the plants to UV. So if I take a wand and I wave it over a plant, a super bright UV lamp, and I wave it over a plant for a few seconds and move on to the next plant, I'll be okay. The plant will be okay. It'd be stunned for a second, but it'll react by producing more trichomes. If you're going to do it in a way that you have a too strong and you're going towards UVC and a lower UVB and it's too strong, you're just hurting the plants and everything you wave it by. And if there's any microbials and things on your plants and beneficial teas, they're all dead too. So now you've got dead, rotting things you can't see, and you're wondering what that odor is, and your plant's got halitosis, it's exhaling bad breath because you're just killing the thing and making it sick. So your nose is probably one of the most accurate organs a human has, but we were never trained how to use it. It'll tell you the truth, just like a plant will tell you the truth. They'll never lie to you, a plant. A plant will never put his leaves up high five in the room while it's sick and dying. It won't do that. And also, if a plant smells awesome, Stevie Wonder will tell you what a good plant and a bad plant is. just with one deep breath. Walk into a grow and take a deep breath and go, over there, something's wrong. Your nose will tell you instantly. I love the fact that if you can shut off the noise, you know, all people talking, the machines, fans, all that stuff. If you just stop for a second, take a deep breath in a grow, you know who you're talking to because you know how they work. You see the plants look great, yes, but everything else is right. I've gotten, in some of the consulting I did, I've upset some people because my filter's broken. I just tell the truth. And I get in there and I'm like, you have root rot, you have this, you have, no, I don't. Oh, I said, yeah, you do. And I start doing my bloodhound sniffing and I go, it's over here. And I said, how about you do me a favor? Why don't you pick that plant right there up and smell the bottom of it? You know, and like, see, I wasn't making it up. I'm not here I want to help you fix the place. To fix the place, we have to find all the wrongs and right them. What caused that? This tray's too wet. This tray's too dry. What pump are you using? Is it have enough, you know, pressure to reach here? All the things you would think were standard, understood, they're overlooked by people who are stressed and pressing and trying to get things going in a hurry. I mean, the amount of construction, the guys thought, oh yeah, I'm going to throw $1 million in this thing. I'm going to have it up in 3 months. We would just laugh. And 18 months later, they're going, yeah, we don't have permits yet.
Yeah, someone in chat actually chimed in with a good point too. The more UV light you use, the more it will actually increase that leaf surface temperature as well. So you got to factor that in.
It's a fine dance. It's all about the dose, like anything else you would take. I know it's a bad analogy for some people, but it's all about the dose. If you find that sweet spot, the plants will pay you back amazingly so. If you overdo it, well, then you're going to hurt the yield, you're going to hurt the quality, you're going to hurt the plant, and it's not going to pay you back. If I was to do a formula of UV, I would never have a UV diode that was on all day or during the whole light cycle, whether you're a greenhouse and just supplemental or you're in an indoor grow. I would never have a UV lamp that was on all day. Plants don't want UV all day. If you think about sunrise, sunset, and when the atmosphere blocks certain, you know, preferably mostly UVC, but the UV does get, you know, you have these spikes in the morning and light at night, right, which trigger responses with specific reds that you get the plants to wake up, go to sleep, kind of ease them in, ease out of their day. So the sunrise, sunset thing. But if you just remind them here and there along the way, it's a systemic response. So the power you would use to keep that thing on all the time is wasted. And those diodes, if you're using an LED UV source, they don't last as long as your basic reds and your whites. So
is that still a problem? That was another question I was about to ask. Traditionally, they've been significantly lower in life. Yeah. I know they top off, but was it 3,000 to 5,000 hours? It was the last time I checked.
3-4 years ago. That was it. They just said, you know, 3,000 to 5,000. Then 2 years ago, we had some doing 10,000. Now we have ones that are claiming 30,000 hours, but that still wouldn't have it on all the time because you don't need it. It's a systemic response. You just need to trigger the plant to remind it at intervals, like some guys use the UV wand. And you know, but again, I don't like that idea because I don't want people working under that. You know, someone walking around their eyes, waving that thing around if it's not shielded properly. If you have it and you know your time sequence of when people are working in the room or when they're working on these rows or that rows, you can actually time it so you stimulate the plants without bothering people. Sequentially line up. It requires a secondary power source for the UV, but it can be done. It's something I've always looked heavily into to when it's cost effective to do it. That's been part of my plan for 4 years now.
Have you had a chance to work with anyone doing turbine power or anything like that? I had a chance to do a really cool talk with a guy recently.
Gas turbine. Sad to say that a couple of growers there at this particular location apparently got COVID, so they're on lockdown, the whole facility. But what they found was, just like dosing UV, there's a sweet spot to loads on turbines to where they just work really well. If you tax them too hard, their negative spikes and drops are magnified. So if the manufacturer says it's going to operate at this level, well, that's in a perfect world scenario at a perfect temperature, which doesn't exist in the real world. So they're finding, you know what, if I run it at 65, 70% of what they say, it just stays on and just works. But if I'm pushing it a bit harder to get more output, it's blowing gear. at least a couple places I've seen. I think that's a huge part of the future to make more efficient electronic fixtures to use with it, but some sort of filtration and light capacitors to stabilize the output of those devices.
We had a question from chat. Can you elaborate more on the far reds and
Okay. Well,
because there's a lot of confusion and a lot of terrible information on it as well that's out there. That's just bad.
it's, if you look at most LED manufacturers and lighting people, they call it far red, and to them, far red just means beyond 700 nanometers, right? If you've been around plants, you know that there's specific nanometer ranges of reds have specific results. Spectrum King has a patent on a light formula because we figured that out long before everyone else did. The far reds, meaning after 700, like for example, if you want your plants to wake up happy and go to sleep happy, there's a specific range, roughly 730 nanometers, that has a very positive effect. In Holland, at Wageningen, there's a professor there, a woman, that she does all these plant studies, and she couldn't do cannabis, even though it was in Holland. So she did tomatoes, and she got a 25 to 30% increase in yields by adding 730 nanometers to her greenhouse tomatoes. And I laughed, and she thought, what the hell are you laughing at? And I said, well, if you knew, all you had to do is take a light meter, go outside and measure what you have, then go back in your greenhouse and measure what's coming through the glaze, you'll see that the reason you're getting a better yield is because you don't get any of that through a greenhouse ceiling. It's all blocked by the glazing, the glass. So your existing light temperature, and especially the older the glazing, the less intensity gets through, and the color shift goes towards the blues. So these plants aren't getting the right dose of light to succeed. The irony being that bulbs, like double-ended bulbs, which so many people swear by, where do they come from? What was their original purpose? It was to heat and light greenhouses in Northern Europe. That's where they were invented 20 years ago. So, and also to reestablish parts of the spectrum that were completely missing due to the glazing. That's why they never worried about having lots of blues and HBS, because they had halides for that. And more importantly, the natural sunlight coming through a greenhouse ceiling was color shifting towards blues.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm having a camera issue at the moment.
No worries.
But yeah, so what I lost my train of thought here. Let me pull up my questions. Oh, so what is the actual red that triggers the wake up and go to sleep, and then how long before and after the plants come on really is actually needed? I've always been told 5 minutes before and after the lights come on and turn off, but is that really true? And
if you look,
what is it?
If you look at sunrise and sunset, I suspect it's more 10 to 15 minutes would really do the trick. And the beauty of it is, okay, if you're running old school lights and you flick lights come on full power pretty much within the first couple minutes, that's the equivalent of pouring a bucket of ice water on a sleeping human. You wake up confused, angry, and don't know what the hell's going on. If someone wakes you up gently, you get into your day in a better mood, and your body's in a better state, and it doesn't go into shock, releasing cortisol and freaking out. These plants are no different. By using that 730 to trigger them to wake up and trigger them to actually wind down for the day, you could, if you're really advanced scientifically and you want to get the biggest yield per square foot you could possibly get in a location, you would actually somewhat trick the plants by cutting a few hours off every day. You could then make your day be 18 hours long, 12 hours of light, even 11 and a half hours of full light, 15 to wake them up of a red, and 15 to put them down of the 730 red. So that's your 12-hour cycle. And they wouldn't need 8 hours of sleep anymore. They could get with 4. So if you had an indoor grow and you programmed everything accordingly, your staff would be tripping because they'd be, every day would be 4 hours shorter. So their shifts would be changing. But it's been proven that you could push plants along, and like your autoflower strains, you could literally get a few more crops a year that way. which means your yield per square foot just goes through the roof. As far as, so it's not a theory anymore. It's proven that it does work to help plants wake up and go to sleep faster, which gains you 2 hours of productive plant growth per day. So
That's really crazy. I
it
had a
is.
question. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Continue.
I'm saying that if anyone had thought, I mean, 45 years ago, as a kid, delivering newspapers on a bicycle and slinging nickel and dime bags out of the same bag in the front of my bike, if I had no clue there was a male plant, there was a female plant, there were different families, different strains, different parts of the world had different stuff, I had no idea. And as time went on, I learned more and learned more. You just got this curiosity thing, things that impress me or that I'm interested in, and I just retain all of it, you know, whether it's music, whether it's microbials, whether it's light patterns or location of the world and quality of light. You start figuring out all these things, like with reefs. I had some guys that they were actually growing live coral in their tanks, these really wealthy dudes in Dubai, and they asked us to make them something for their tanks. And I said, well, what coral are you using? And they said, what do you mean? I said, you said you're growing coral. I said, where is it from? And they said, the ocean. I go, no, like what part of the world is this stuff from? And when they told me, and I explained to them why I asked that question, they'd never thought of it. But then it made perfect sense to them too. And it's just because the obsession wanting to know how and why to make things better. It's like the slogan was, plants don't lie, people do. I stick by that. You know, plants will always tell you the truth. Your fish will not lie to you. You know, they'll tell you what's up. If you see a fish with gray cloudy eyes, you know something's up and it's not good. If you see fish's color change and they slow down, you know something's up and it's not good. They've already given you plenty of warnings to get to where it's that bad. But if you're observing and your nose works, you know what's up, because you've trained yourself to be perceptive to it. And if you're interested and passionate about it, you'll do something productive for them. It's what you got to do. I mean, why else be alive if you're not interested in being alive and finding out what's going on? That's just me, maybe, but I think that's a better way to have that. Keep your mind going, keep it thinking. What else could we do? You know, I mean, Stephen, let's think. In some of the conversations you and I have had privately, I mean, the amount of compounds and derivatives that have come to light in the past few years, it's beyond fascinating. It's like stars in the sky. We thought there was one. It was called THC. No, it's only one part of a massive constellation. And then, you know, Dr. Raphael Meshulam just came out with a whole new thing about these acids that started early cannabis plant breeding, and boom, it opened up my head to like, wow, I have a whole new band of subject matter that I have to know more about.
And I don't know. I have very, very mixed feelings about his latest announcement. I'm not gonna lie.
You know, any guy that's 88 years old and is still studying weed is cool by me, right? But yes, is it perfect? No, but he's willing to keep trying, digging and finding and pushing the science forward to get other countries maybe make things legal. If this country was legal to study this stuff, you know how far ahead we'd be?
I disagree with the idea of patenting cannabinoids.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. With pot and what?
With patenting cannabinoids, the new thing is
that side of it. That big pharma is going to influence that, and big pharma is probably paying for him to study. Yeah, that kind of thing. I have girls to know that want to patent their brand.
One of the things I have mad respect for Ethan Russo for leaving GW and coming back over to the light side and leaving the dark side. Mad respect for him, because he was right there, that same level, you know, working for GW Pharma, you know, the most evil cannabis company on the planet, you know, and told him basically, I'm done with this, and walked away. And then I had a chance to meet him out in California. You know, he's working very closely with Dragonfly, and you know, the very opposite end of the industry from what he used to do. So it's pretty cool to see some people find the light, but then you got other people like Meshulam who just want to patent everything and, you know, move everything into a corporatized pharmaceutical version, which in my opinion is a very dangerous road.
Well, when you do
Well, we
dehumidification,
saw how that test, was it Portugal or Spain, where they had 34 patients and 28 of them died or something like that. So with the synthetic
it
cannabinoids,
was
so
was
this is
it
a very dangerous road.
Sativex, and what was the other one called?
Oh,
Yeah,
Sativex and oh, what was the other one? But they lost a lot of the patent rights for the CBD version.
hmm.
Oh, what's somebody in chat can tell me that what's the GW Pharma patented CBD?
Marinol. Marinol
No, that's
is
the
Sativex.
Marinol is the THC, the synthetic THC. Um, cannabis.
Somebody will
No,
pop it up. I can't
yeah,
remember.
I'll think of it.
But yeah, that aspect of it, there's always going to be profiteers. There's always going to be um, people who step over that line. So the rest of us know where the line is because we watch them step
Habitual
down.
line steppers.
Well, yeah, yeah. There, I mean, hell, some of the people within my own orbit, I mean, I'm amazed at some of the things they do because I wouldn't do that. But in their perspectives, that makes sense. That's how you do stuff. Maybe I'm
Epidolex took me.
Alex, there it is. Yes, thank you. Whoever that was, thank you for putting. I was not going to come to my head right away. There's a downside to going senile. Can't
Yes,
remember.
yes. I have the same problem. Prolonged
And I'm not even high right now. It's just me losing my memory.
sobriety is the mind killer. I think that's in Dune, right? I will let the fear pass through me. Prolonged sobriety is the mind killer. Didn't Muad'Dib say that in Dune?
I do not know.
I'm just making a bad sci-fi joke. Anyways, um, what else you got going on over there? What are the other big things that you've been seeing in the industry working with a lot of these bigger growths?
I'd say that the trend towards I call it a bit reactionary, if you will, but you know, there's people that want to go pure old school organics, and there's a place for that, and I'm not against it. I'm always going to be curious to know what everyone's doing so I can kind of get a bigger picture and understand what I could do to help with that. And BioCat Solutions More was a perfect example of the guys who are using straight mineral salts, you know, Jack's 321, Front Row Ag, things like that, like just really getting good results that way, but also having massive cleanups and massive other negative pathogen growths because they weren't having anything to keep them in check. Um, Microchelation and nutrient cycling in the rhizosphere is plant magic. You know, it's just something when you understand it, that your plant knows the buffet is always open and they can have whatever they want when they want it. And you see the exponential growth that induces. Why wouldn't you? You know, why wouldn't you add that to your formula, to your recipe? You know,
I keep trying to explain this to the people in Oklahoma, like different farms and different people I work for out here, is like ditch the plastic and put the cover crop. You'll get lower temperatures at your fruit zone, and you'll get a far better microbial diversity, and you'll end up using the same amount of water. They're all worried about nutrient stealing and water stealing, and it's like you don't understand, by having that water temperature or the ground temperature 15 degrees colder, that's going to make a huge difference to your evaporation rate night and day,
the
especially
oxygenation
in
of the
those
roots.
top 3 inches.
But you know, if you lower the temperature of the soil that much, the oxygen ratio in the roots is exponentially better.
Well, not only that, let's just talk about it financially. Let's just talk at a 5 acre level. For 5 acres, it is over two. It's around $3,000 for all the plastic to put it down. Rough ballpark. It is just not even $1,000 to do 5 acres of cover crop that you could turn around and resell. So doing thyme, a culinary lavender, creeping rosemary, stuff that you could cut and resell
But more
all
important,
12 months of the year.
two of the ones you just touched on, the culinary lavender and the rosemary, also keep some pathogens and pests away.
Oh yeah, culinary lavender and
Yes.
thyme. You plant that you plant all three of those with the rosemary. You won't see bugs in your grow. They fly over and they see this toxic wasteland of essential oils, and they're like, dude, I'm not dealing with that. And they'll keep going.
If you had
You
like
know,
some,
the whole idea is to make it as you don't have to make it perfect. You know, don't make it perfect for the insects. Make it unpleasant for them to be there. Make cross, if you're in an indoor grow, make crosswinds and make it a bitch for an insect to fly across your room. Like make it really hard for him to fly a straight line path across your room. If you start doing stuff like that, stuff cannot fly from one end of the room to the other. It has to leapfrog around, and it means they don't spread as fast. And a lot of this stuff, changing the humidity, changing the temperature, changing the CO2 levels, changing all these different things radically for a short period of time, and just making it horribly unpleasant. We've talked about in the past doing russet mite treatments or other mite treatments doing 120 degrees for 1 hour and things like that, making it just incredibly unpleasant to be an insect in that grow. They're going to find a place where it's not horrible to be, the same way that humans do. Humans don't live in Death Valley very often, right? They go visit it, but they don't live there.
No, but something I think it was Roger mentioned earlier about it being really hot in Texas and using specific things to keep his plants going and de-stress them.
Yeah, silica in particular makes a huge difference in reducing heat stress.
Well, when you understand how plants absorb and use it, and you don't do a foliar spray with it, that's not my fault. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the cell walls to retain moisture and hold themselves up and not wilt and break.
Well, and particularly some products make plants very photosensitive. Regalia is a very common product in some markets, illegal in others, but very common product in some markets that's used quite frequently on a wide range of products for powdery mildew. But if you use that in the middle of the day in the high sun, it's gonna make your plant super photosensitive, and you're gonna get sunburn. It's gonna really screw up your plant.
Well,
So
if you were to walk out there and see your plants tacoing and turning leaves and things, they're kind of telling you, that's not the way to go.
Yep. And then you post a picture of it, 50% of the people tell you it's russet mites. The other 50% of them tell you CalMag.
Well, but when someone's been suspecting they know what's wrong and having had a problem once, they're shell shocked by it. Whether that's the absolute truth, what the problem was, that's what they believe it to be. And as the saying goes, whatever you believe is true. If you believe that the sky is purple, to you it's purple, and everyone else is an idiot. If you're open to the world, you go, well, wait a minute. I'm pretty sure that's kind of a shade of blue, and you might be a little bit, they're going to call you an idiot, but the rest of the people go, maybe this guy's right. Let's look at this. I've seen things at first glance like I was completely wrong on, like a manganese deficiency can remind you of certain insects of what it does. How many people can even pronounce the word molybdenum and know what it does? Does anyone know what strontium
does? Not only that, but molybdenum and manganese both are so horribly underdosed, like almost universally at every grow I go to. When I do a soil sample, and especially people are like, dude, my purples aren't purple, and it's like, well, yeah, you have no chemical ability to produce anthocyanin because you don't have the precursors.
But not just that, to have the right doses of those trace minerals, but more importantly, to know the right temperature and humidity to trigger those responses that the plants are waiting for in their natural environment. Again, knowing where they come from originally, knowing how to reproduce that environment will trigger that explosion of colors. The purples, you got to cool that night. If you want your purples to pop, drop your nighttime temperatures 12, 15 degrees Fahrenheit, unless 5 degrees. That's sativa weather.
Well, there's a way to cheat though. So plants will actually bind anthocyanin to, in the event of a molybdenum toxicity, they'll use anthocyanin to bind it up to get it out of its basically out of its bloodstream, for an oversimplified explanation. So. Right. You can actually use mild molybdenum toxicity to force heavy anthocyanin production. To trigger it, and then to force it to be a heavier expression, to make those purples black, or to make that purple neon purple, or fuchsia purple, like anyone has seen, I posted a picture a while ago of Melty Head Slothy Grows. You can find him on YouTube. I think I forget if it's Slothy Heads or Melty Heads or whatever. He's been on the show before, but he had a black beard that was it looked like someone took a circle and then airbrushed the buds. Like they were just so fuchsia purple. And it looked artificial. Looked fake. But I saw it with my own eyes. Like I know for a fact that it was legit, and it was because he had that dialed in. Like he paid attention to it.
Right.
And it's something. Same thing with lettuce. In fact, there was a question on Reddit today, and I replied to it on reds in lettuce, and their lettuce not being that red color that they were desiring, and I recommended sodium molybdenate, and because that it's required. If you don't have that, you're not going to get it, period. And it doesn't, you do have to have those other factors, either high light intensity or temperature swing or whatever the triggering factor is, or cold temperature or whatever, depending on the crop. But if you have that and you don't have the molybdenum, it might be light purple, but it's not going to be purple, and you're going to not get that same sales appeal that's going to fly off the shelf. If you have a neon purple, a blue, an orange, or rainbow bud, it's not going to sit on that shelf very long.
There's a nutrient brand that I worked with 11 years ago. I'll leave them out of it, but the owner of that company had that figured out, that one little detail right there. And some of the indicas and things we were growing back then, people were like, how did you do that? And I wasn't going to give away the special sauce, because back then you didn't, especially California, product labels, if you can't give a guaranteed dose over 1% of something, they don't even want you to write it down. So these trace minerals that are, micro percentages of a single percent, but are so crucial when just like the UV, when that little fine line, you hit that spot and it's just the right amount, it's crazy. Strontium is another one that no one ever hears mentioned, but if you have the right little microdose of strontium, your plant's uptake of calcium is improved. Their overall health, we could change in 2 days. Like some people never thought Epsom salt was that efficient for, you've seen it. You could take Epsom salt and fix plants overnight if it's a couple of simple conditions, make them turn right around.
It's magnesium deficiency, absolutely.
But if you can't identify it, if you don't know what you're seeing, you could look like something else. You kind of, then they start feeding more, and then they have burn tips, and they have this, then they have that. If you just
what's even better is when you have, and this is the example I love to use to people, because you can replicate this all day long in a closed system in aquaponics. Put a UV system on a small aquaponics system and watch how quickly everything gets phosphorus deficient. Not phosphorus deficient at all. You test the ppms of that phosphorus. That phosphorus is exactly where it was before. That didn't change none. What did change is the bioavailability of the iron, the zinc, and the manganese,
right.
which are now completely unavailable, which totally lock out the phosphorus. So you can dose all the phosphorus you want, and ain't going to fix it. And this is where people have to have an understanding of Mulder's chart and some of the other things when you get into diagnosing mystery plant illnesses and trying to figure out phantom discolorations and just unexplainable things when everything else seems to be perfect, and you get a water sample back and just something's horribly out of ratio. Well, yeah, it's locking out X, Y, and Z, and that's why you're having this issue. Maybe I have to horribly overdose something temporarily, but it's going to bring everything within ratio, and suddenly everything turns green again. I've walked into rooms that were, in fact, in the last year I was at a grow, and they had a room, and their nutrient mix did not have iron as part of the just wasn't part of the thing. Everything was just chlorotic as fuck. So all I did was add DTPA iron to the mix, and suddenly everything looked
glorious
perfect.
Change.
Within 48, 72 hours, it was like I had, magic had happened, and the whole room was green again.
The sorcerers
but you have other deficiencies that take a lot longer to recover, so it just depends on what it is too. Not everything is healable quickly. Some things aren't, if you have a copper deficiency or something, or a zinc, horrible zinc deficiency, it's those plants are going to have to really regenerate almost all that tissue before
you're talking weeks
really
of worrying at that point.
Yeah.
The beauty of microbiota is that they'll keep that stuff in balance if you feed them properly, and they'll microchelate, and they'll serve the doses, and they'll clean. If you're in aquaponics, they'll help clean your fish too. Just like humans have bacteria in our skin that we don't want to think about, fish need certain bacteria on their scales to keep them clean, to prevent buildup. And once you understand that and get that going, the colors, just like weed, you get the magical shiny little reflections and stuff, and the fish move more. It changes everything. The right balance of microbials and nutrients.
just to harp on molybdenum a little bit more, a lot of people don't realize molybdenum is needed in order to convert nitrate back to ammonia, in order for them to actually use it, that, the actual form of nitrogen that the plants can use.
Right.
And if they don't have enough molybdenum, I've actually seen aquaponic systems that were completely stripped of molybdenum because they had dosed iron, they had dosed, counted for everything else, never touched the trace minerals. And because they were running their nitrates at between 60 and 120 parts per million for 1 to 4 years, the
Jesus.
plants had just sucked it all up trying to process that nitrogen, because, or that nitrate, and converting it back to ammonia. So, again, you go to a system that has 140 nitrate and, 0.25 or even 1 part per million ammonia in the water, and the plants are nitrogen deficient. But the moment you add molybdenum, boom, everything is fixed.
Take
It's
NH4, NH3 down to NH2, and all of a sudden it's fine. It's
Yep.
crazy. The complexity of a molecule. The more complex the molecule, the more effort the plant has to try to produce enzymes to break it down. If you break it down for them, essentially, like I said earlier, open the buffet, so they don't have to stress and waste energy breaking down complex molecules. It's a flat out win. Just the benefit to you, the plants, the cleaning, everything just easier if you just give them what they want and establish it and then know how to measure it. One of the problems with guys and gardens is that, just like anything else with a dose, more is not always better. You gotta back off the throttle sometimes. A
It's like
grower I know,
spices with cooking is the best way I like to put it, man. You overdose, you're gonna know right away that you overdosed it. Or chili powder, you're gonna know real quick that you added too much.
I had a grower friend that just got back into it, was out of it for a couple of runs because he had some, to say, legal issues to contend with. He got back in the game, and he sent me a picture of his first crop, and it's looking good. And he goes, "Hey man, what's up with this?" And I look at his plants and I go, "You got to back off the nitrogen and give just a little bit more CalMag. This strain is super nitrogen sensitive, and it was, it looked perfectly healthy, but it had the little clawed tips, just the very tips were turning down." He's like, "I've never seen that before." I go, "It's just a hair too much nitrogen and not just a little tiny bit of Epsom salt, just a half gram." And that's the guy we had that I told you about earlier. Had a half-hour discussion about a half gram of Epsom salt difference, but that balanced it out for that strain. Every strain is not,
Absolutely.
there's not one feed fits all. There's not one VPD chart that fits all. You can
And
get
5% of all strains are gonna fucking hate whatever method that you do. Doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you're doing, it likes everything else. And you just have to remember that 5% of all phenos will just hate whatever it is that you're doing. If you're doing DWC, it wants media bed. If you're doing media bed, it wants soil. Like if you're doing indoor, it wants outdoor. Like you're doing something wrong that it's just gonna bitch about.
When I walk into a facility that's got 6 rooms and 13 strains in one reservoir, I go, I just say, again, I throw a number out there. Go, your yields are about this on average, and like,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
How do you
People that run that, and I have the same issue with people that do the aquaponics that don't do the dual root zones, and it's like, cool. So you're doing like 20 strains with one nutrient reservoir, and you're doing absolutely no maximization with any of your production. Like, and then if you do it, so let's just say if you go the other route and you do decoupled, now I have 16 different reservoirs to manage, or I can run one reservoir and then just auxiliary feed every different strain as needed, and not have to do shit. It's the amount of control, especially when you get to commercial scale, that a lot of these people simply do not understand because they haven't grown thousands of cannabis plants at once. They don't understand when you're trying to do, if I'm doing this commercially and I'm investing this much time and this much square footage, I need to maximize the yield of that plant.
not just
And I need
maximize
the level of control to do that.
the consistency, for every
It's a
cycle.
resin factory. That we're not doing anything other. It's a resin factory, and if the
Yes,
resin factory is not consistent, we need to change.
right. And finding families or kissing cousin plants that are close enough to where you can put them in the same bay and give them that same reservoir. I keep telling people, I said, why would you put an 11-week tropical strain with an 8-week mountain strain and expect happy things to happen? Nobody's happy in that room. Everyone's screwed for one reason or another. But if you took that, put it with this guy in this room and separate these guys over here, and then fed these guys this much and these guys this, you know, this feed level, all of a sudden a couple days later, things start turning around, and then they think they're the master and they're going to do it again, and they don't realize that it's as much as I know, there's still plenty more to go. Still learning new things and figuring out stuff along the way.
Especially when it comes to the microbials, you know, it's so,
Yes.
and we've talked about this at length on the aquatic side. I've done a whole hour-long talks on this, on how little we know and how little there is mapped out when it comes to aquatic microbes that can increase plant production in terms of mineralization. And 78% of those aquatic ones can survive in a terrestrial biome for more than a month. So, or, you know, continue to replicate or whatever. So, or continue to be functionally useful. How about that?
You know, the
So,
hot smokers in the deep sea that they're pumping out this, you know, basically underwater volcanoes, the minerals they're spewing, if you could capture that and bring that back up, which I know a company in Canada was doing that, amazing benefits for plants, and no one would ever put the two and two together. Why would a microbial from a hot smoker make my plants grow better when you know there's no known correlation between the two? Well, if you look at the tube worms and things, if you look at the tube worms around those hot smokers, they're like genetic freaks compared to ones at different levels because they have all those trace minerals. I'm seeing the wolf in that one. There's definitely a wolf going on there. You have to
maybe.
explain for people who aren't seeing you, Stephen, why I said
Oh,
wolf.
oh yes, this is my little happy little hybrid that I've acquired.
Gorgeous dog.
Yeah, he's quite the cutie and very well behaved, very obedient. So he just doesn't leave my side, and he's good. And he was whining, he wanted to come up on the bed, so I figured I'd let him come say hi. I think everyone would like to see him.
Nice, good looking dog.
Yeah, he's cool. His name is Draco, and he's my little guard buddy. Goes with me to wherever we go, all the different farms and different things. We have some new stuff we're working on, or I'm working on. Recently wrapped things up with over Organic Innovations, and working on a new project we got going on, or I got going on here. And we'll have more on that here. Hopefully in 30 to 45 days, we'll have some cool stuff to show you guys.
Nice.
Kind of doing some construction and whatnot in the meantime. So it's be pretty fun.
Of all the ways to grow, every aspect of it, when you find the niche that interests you, I mean, any person, if they truly wanted to open their heads up and step into this, the learnings, it never ends. There's always something new and exciting to figure out. I mean, cannabinoids, we thought there were only 13 just 20 years ago. I mean, now there's hundreds. And now the ramifications of interactions between them and balance and ratios. And you and I talked about CBG and CBN, and, you know, knowing that by itself, this is worth that much, but if you don't have it in balance with the other ones for the synergistic effect, it doesn't matter. You know, like these guys can make their synthetic THC all they want. I don't care. That's not going to, you can have 80% pure THC. That's not going to give you the same effect as a well-grown, balanced plant. Just isn't going to do it.
And I often love to tell people, you know, of the last 2 years or 3 years that I can recall, the strain that I can remember getting the most screwed up on was 16%, and I don't even remember what the strain was, but it was from Dragonfly Earth Medicine. It was 16% something, and it just had a terpene profile that just rung my bell, like just, oh my gosh, just kicked me a straight, you know, drop kick to the face. Like, where am I right now? But it was, you know, but this is something that was less than 20%, and the market is dominated. And this is something that I'm very concerned with, because we've already seen strain extinctions with long flowering sativas. We've seen a lot of the old skunk strains that are not easily smell mitigated, you know, disappear. And we don't know what terpenes were missing or not being present, or what ratios are not being found. And now we're seeing the same thing happen with everyone chasing these stupid high THC strains in all the new markets, because that's what everyone wants, because people are not properly educated. And this really is a thing where we need to do, as a community, a better job of educating people that are coming into the cannabis community on terpenes and their importance, of their medical importance, and educating the consumer on the importance of not chasing THC, not so that
Balance and
the
dosing.
market demand isn't there.
Balance and dosing. If you make a good cake, there's not one star ingredient. If you cook a good steak and you prep stuff, there's not one star ingredient. You have to get the whole sauce in balance makes the difference. I mean, like you said, you had this strain which wrecked you, which on paper shouldn't have done that. And I've had ones that made me completely effing paranoid, but that's my body chemistry. Where someone I know is like, this is my favorite strain. I smoked that. I'm like, you know what? I'm never going to touch that one again. I had a bad, few hours because of it. And other ones that make other people hyper make me relaxed. It's understanding your own body chemistry, but also the overall effect. I mean, for someone who's got too much going on in his head and has ADD, I'm that guy. I found a strain like Bruce Banner completely refreshing because I could finish a project, focus, lock on it, put it away, and move on to the next one. Like better than I ever could, even as a kid in school. If something interested me, I could ace it and instantly. But if it didn't, it wouldn't get in my head. That strain like that allowed the focus to kind of bring you back in to get that thing done. I don't care if it's physical labor of, changing a tire in your truck, whatever it could be. The strain that can bring you back and kind of calm you and focus you. If I'm, the older I get, the more I realize that I don't want to get wasted, lit. I want to be comfortable. I want to feel good. It's crazy.
Well, sometimes I want to get wasted when I'm trying to go to sleep.
Yeah, the ratio's changing from when I was younger. You want to get lit more and more about, hey, pain management. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to sleep? Luckily,
I love it.
I figured out things for me that work, but
yeah. So tell us what is your what works good for you?
Well, not to get into a long diatribe, but I've been dead twice and been through a lot of major injuries, and I've had a handful of surgeries. So I kicked my own ass, basically. A bit of a daredevil. So broken this, broken that. I have a plate and screws in my neck. I deal with a lot of pain and stiffness. And what I found was that a simple diet change made a massive difference. Knowing what foods you should eat. And it all comes back to closer to raw, closer to natural you get, the better you feel overall. And again, it's a personal taste thing. There's some people who are never going to start eating, buttery steaks because that's their thing. I like a good piece of red meat, but I'm not doing it every day. Dose, back to dosing, all about the dose, how much, when, time of day thing. The only addiction I have left truly is espresso. I friggin' love coffee. That's about it. And good weed. Nothing better than open up a jar of something really cool and taking that deep breath. That changes it all. That makes it all worthwhile. Now, see, Steven, now you're making me Jones, so I'll go get my dogs. So not here with me in the office.
By the way, Brendan has a super awesome dog who will probably scare the shit out of most people if you saw him in person. But
yeah,
awesome.
Bluto is a tank, but he's a very happy tank. But he's definitely he's like my Harley. He's a low rider wide glide. He's not even up to my knee. He's not even up to my knee, and he's well over 100 pounds, and there's no fat on him. Yeah.
We had someone in our Frosty in chat goes, yeah, it's just as crazy as everyone making wine just to make it as strong as possible.
Yeah.
The point isn't just to get drunk.
Right. I had a really big awakening, but especially when you're talking about wine. When I lived in France for almost 7 years, my ex is French, and when I was over there, I got to know wine well because I knew a guy about a thing. Just because I grew up in an Italian neighborhood by New York City, you know how it is back east. You know a guy about a thing. This is my guy for this. This is my guy for that. Let me get this. Let me get that. And in France, I learned the language quickly because I'm paranoid and I wanted to eat. And as I learned French, I started realizing how they did stuff. Let's say this super expensive bottle that cost $300 in the United States was grown on this hillside, but the neighbor next to him couldn't afford to pay for the Appellation Contrôlée, which is the French label saying, yes, you're the real deal. I could buy the same wine from the same hillside for $5. And if I took it to a wine snob in any city in the world and poured them a glass of each, they couldn't tell the difference. And what it was, I had a brother-in-law that was at the phone company with a buddy who was at the post office, And the post office trucks would do runs for us to his vineyard to bring it back in the truck. So we were, we had a little wine business going on. I was over there in the 90s. Same thing. When you're passionate about stuff, you learn about it. You know what it's worth. You know what you can do with it. I dig stuff that I find interesting, and I want to just keep learning and keep figuring out ways to do it better. Bring a problem, I want to solve it. That's just part of what gets me up every day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have some cool stuff to talk about before the end of the year.
Yeah,
for sure.
I suspect that the deeper we get in these rabbit holes, we'll solve a few things that we'll have some surprises, no doubt. From your side, from my side, from combined with other people we know, I think we'll have some fun for sure.
Oh yes, indeed. Is there any kind of trends for old markets versus new markets or things like that you're seeing in the market? You work with a lot of, kind of both halves of the coin, and I do as well. And there's definitely a pretty huge difference between one side and the other.
What I'm finding is that production cost management, whether you're organic, production cost management, process, replication, and cleanliness are not just the buzzwords. They have no choice. Everyone's being, now you're going legit. Now your shit's being tested. Now you have to pass this, PPM, this, all that, all these levels. You start getting this linear path to getting things to be just so. And then be able to, now you've done it. Now you have to do it again. Now you have to do it a third time and a fourth time. Now you know exactly what your yields are. And the problem is now you have an investor telling you, well, our margins aren't good enough. Well, then you have a guy going, okay, you want more margin? Guess what? I'm going to grow this strain once a year, and it's going to go for 3 times what everything else goes for. You can't be done. Yes, it can. And the artisan grower, the true artist that brings out that thing, you go, what the is that? Oh my, I don't want it every day, but that's like, if you're going for that 18-year-old bottle of scotch, when you have it, you go, it's a mind-blowing moment.
And there's still people getting 3 and 4K a pound for good shit, but you better have something that's different, and it better be a longer flowering and something that just isn't in that normal market, for whatever XYZ reason.
What you just, throughout the course of our conversation tonight, you've dropped a few pearls of wisdom that if people were studying and paying attention, and I'll break it down to the simplest executive summary. You pick a strain, you study it intently, you understand what compounds do what to trigger specific responses. And in 10 cycles later, you're getting 4K a pound because you took that one and you took it to the next level. But if you're trying to be a one-size-fits-all Coors Light of weed, you're never going to see that. I would much rather get something right and then repeat that process and feel really good about it, and then teach people how to maintain that process, then start another one. That's the guys that are really successful. I never met a guy who's really successful that has 60 strains on his farm. Never once. But I met a guy that has, you count his strains on his fingers.
You can pheno hunt and start with 60 strains. You need to get it down to 24.
60 or 100 strains, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
But live production garden, the successful guys, they don't have dozens of strains going on. They got a handful.
No, they got 1 to 2 dozen for sure.
And
then shit they're working on.
Right. Well, they're having their fun in the pheno hunting room.
Yeah.
And playing with the breeding and so forth. Some of my good friends here in LA, 20 years ago, everyone talked about up north. 25 years ago, they talked about BC bud up in Canada. That was such a big deal. BC bud.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Then it was Northern California before that and after it. And the past few years, just luckily that, that we're Spectrum King and BioCat is based in Los Angeles. Some of the weed coming out of LA, I'll put it up against anything from anywhere in the world. There's guys just doing amazing things here. And then when other states went legal, their protege went to Oklahoma, went to Colorado, went to Michigan. And now I know guys that I'm dealing with, hey man, I'm from Glendale. I'm like, when did you head up to Michigan? It's pretty cool. And then one of the guys I'm dealing with a project in Germany, they're still trying to get their shit together, but he's from the high desert here in California. How he ended up over there is a funny story, but I'll let him tell it if he gets here one day. But,
I met a guy in Kadoma, Zimbabwe, from fucking Humboldt. I'm in this club and this dude's. I was like, wait a minute. There's a white guy with blonde dreadlocks. There's another white guy with dreadlocks. Wait a minute. He's got a Cali accent. Wait a minute. I know you. You were at the Regen conference. What the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Never expect it. Never expect it. Well, I was in the Czech Republic a few years ago at a Cannabis, and you know, we went to that country. We didn't bring anything with us due to where we were going, and then we figured we'll find something when we're there. Well, we found we were there, but it was fucking hideous. It was just bad. You're trying to be polite to people, and then I say, "This man, wonder if we can find anything decent." And this guy goes, "I know an American." I go, "Okay." Like, he goes, no. Hold on. You're going to be here at your booth? I go, "Yeah." He sends this guy over. He's a Vietnam vet biker who met some like 15 years younger than him Czech woman 25 years ago. Went to the Czech Republic, has never had a legit job. He has a garage where he grows extremely good buds. He has his strain, his one strain. That's all he does, and he slings it for donations to keep his family going for the past 15 years over there. And the guy, 4 years ago. Damn it, it is 4 years ago. He was already pushing retirement age then, and that's what he was doing, just period. And then I met a Vietnam vet in Arkansas, growing the best Afghan I have ever had. A guy growing it in that hard clay soil in backwoods Arkansas. Man, that was amazing. If you have a closed mind, you'll never find it. If you're open up and your nose works, I've had some surprises, good and bad, of people
You know
cracking
what?
strange places.
To back that up, though, living down in the Oklahoma, Arkansas border-ish area, the soil here very much is really similar in terms of calcium and iron content and manganese content to Africa, and to a lesser extent, well, not a little bit different from Jamaica, but it's very chemically similar to where I was in Africa with a couple of the minor differences.
The Jamaica's got the more the volcanic activity, so that soil's younger.
Jamaica has a lot more magnesium in the soil, yeah.
Huh. That's cool stuff. But again, we could get lost forever if we could keep going this way, Stephen. We get too carried away with it, but yeah.
Oh yeah, but these are some of the best episodes. I can't tell you how many times I've referenced your early episodes for lighting guides. People are asking about lighting. I'm like, nah, there's a guy who did like 3 hours on like everything you could need to know. Just check out the old podcast. So it's been a great resource for many people over the past.
I mean, I don't care if they're even lighting competitors of mine, if they want to just talk light science and stuff, sure. The whole point is, we bring everyone forward if we share knowledge. We improve everything if we just say, fuck ego. Pride is not going to help your life as much as you'd like to think. I mean, look where it put our president. Let's just get ourselves into an adult conversation and go forward. Figure stuff out. I love, you get into a conundrum, you study from all angles, and then somebody says this one thing, you go, didn't think of that, problem solved. If you don't open your mind to hear what that person has to say, problem's not solved. You didn't learn anything. If you're not learning anything, you're stagnating, and just like water, stagnation doesn't go so well. You had any good questions there?
Absolutely. Yeah, we had another question from chat. Actually, something I meant to bring up a minute ago and kind of got lost because we got off topic, and I want to find it again. Hold on. Was about compost. Hold on a second. Puppy keeps he wants to play right now.
Ectothermic reaction compost?
No, about okay, I read there's 2 ways to break down compost: microbial and bacterial. I never heard you guys discuss bacterial. I think you meant mycorrhizal or fungal and bacterial. So the reason why we don't talk a lot about bacterial, or at least I haven't in the past, is because in aquaponics, that's kind of the main in any kind of aquatic biome, bacteria and archaea and the non-fungal components are infinitely more dominant than the
just so anyone listening gets their own simple thing. A compost heap, right, you're going to have fungal dominance simply because of all the cellulose and lignin.
Yep.
Fungi don't live well in solution. So if
Yep.
you're dealing in an aquaponic world, you have to deal with archaea, protobacteria, and bacteria, and ciliates, and all those things, because that's their natural environment. They're fine in solution. They flow in rivers, they flow in deep ocean, they come in rain. They run. That's how they get around. If you study mycorrhizal colonies, and it's so trippy. If you were to go in the woods and gently overturn some soil and some leaves by a bank of birch trees, then you see pine trees, then you see and you go down the hill, there's an oak tree. Each one of them have species of mycorrhizal fungal colonies that are specific to the type of tree. Like they know that this species of mycorrhizal, whether it's Carnegie or Trichoderma or whatever you're going to get in there, they take specific nutrient ratios that benefit those plants. So they've learned to grow and live side by side in a symbiotic relationship. Farmers have been tilling the earth and treating with chemicals for so long that most of the soil in California in the farm valleys is Dust Bowl dead. And when someone like Fukuoka wrote, his book about no-till gardens and soil, people, no, you have to till your garden. It's like, no, you don't. The whole point is you're not supposed to. And like you said, your cover crops.
The only time you really need to till would be if the first time you're breaking a field, you need to get all the rocks out of it. So tilling it all up and then running a rock break through it just for the sake of your own sanity is really nice. And then 2, you can also amend in any organics. So you can go get a bunch of straw or grass clippings or leaf or leaf mulch or regular mulch or whatever. It doesn't matter. Or put down a bunch of green mulch, put a cover crop in and till that in if you're in a really clay soil. Or, I hate the shit, but a lot of people love it. Put biochar in there, or whatever. But I think it's snake oil, and I've tried it on a 6-acre plot, and I could prove to you mathematically that it's snake oil. But hey, if it's your thing and you think it'll help you, even that's going to help at least give you some surface area for microbials. So this is the kind of stuff that helps a lot, and where you really need to make sure you're accounting for it. The other big, go ahead.
I'm saying, if you take a deep rooting plant like a daikon or a carrot, have them.
Daikons are great.
Right. They're like jackhammers, man. They'll break any soil open. So you get them in there. And once you have daikons, then you do your cover crops, like the things you mentioned earlier. And all of a sudden, the microbials can get in, the worms can get in, and then everything just starts coming back. And you got to dedicate a couple of years to it. If you're composting on the side and you're using, like you cover it, let it get hot, let it really get into breakdown. The anaerobes do it. When you take that stuff and you spread it over the top of the soil, the balance goes from anaerobes to aerobes, and now it's great for your plants. There's a balance, the 80-20 rule, like in business school, everything else. It's with microbials also. There's people say it's an anaerobe, it's bad, or it's not that simple. It's balance, establishing the balance for the results you want in your soil, in your feed regime, in your compost heap. One of my good friends that used to fly his own plane from Humboldt and fly his stuff down to San Diego, because he had a dispensary there back in the day when he was taking all his grapefruit, citrus, all of his stuff, and just chuck it on the foot of his trees. And everyone was saying, your weed's so citrusy, you want to know the strain, it doesn't make sense. And he would just smile because it was that simple. Everyone thought he had some crazy complex thing. All he was taking was citrus, throwing at the base of his trees. He was doing 2 things. A, he was telling a whole lot of bugs to get the F out. And the citric acid was helping to break down the soil to microchelate nutrients and break down and feed the plant also. So the aromas were making into the plant. It was also a preventative to help keep certain pathogens away. I mean, who would ever think that if you were peeling an orange and had some leftovers, you just chucked it at the base of the plant and walked away? Some people, you're polluting. I'm like, actually, no, I'm doing the plant a favor, but we'll see this is different. If you took alfalfa, leftover alfalfa, and just spread it over your soil, your ground could be like concrete clay. Spread alfalfa and put a tarp over it with some water. And a month later, you'll be able to put your fist in it. It'll get hot, but it'll break it down. It'll actually make it reinvigorate that surface. Once the surface is invigorated, you get a deep rooting plants in there, and you start the cycle.
In the tropics, we take a bunch of, we'd mow the lawn and put it in trash bags. Puppy enjoys gnawing on the dreads. So we take we take the plant material and put it in trash bags, and then we put it out in the sun, and in 30 to 45 days, but simply being in the tropics and cooking off, we'd wet it really well first, so it's kind of putrid, to be frank with you. But after 30 to 45 days, it's black gold. I mean, it looks just like the black gold you buy, black gold #4 at the normal compost place, minus the perlite. Other than that, you wouldn't know a difference. There's no sticks, there's no nothing. It's just in the tropics, all those microbes are evolved to live in those warm temperatures, and they will just go gangbusters. And as long as they're not going, above 180, and you're not,
What people don't understand is your anaerobes and your aerobes, they're not mortal enemies. They play to each other's strengths and weaknesses.
It's very similar to Mulder's chart, and I talk about this when I teach my commercial classes, that your microbes, think of your microbes as the different minerals on your Mulder's chart, right? Your trichodermas and your bacillus and your acetobacters and your all your different groups have their own place on that circle, and if they're out of ratio, you're going to suddenly have a problem. That's why sometimes you see people try to treat different root problems with trichoderma, and they will suddenly have an explosion of trichoderma that nukes a lot of their other stuff, and they start to have secondary problems. Just as one simple example.
Well, it's not the one-size-fits-all cure for everything. Each environment needs a balance.
And this is where things like IMO, like Korean Natural Farming's IMO dosing, or liquid IMOs, and lactobacillus, and doing complexes of microbes that are more of a wide range to kind of fill in the gaps as they're needed colonization wise, because if there's already a heavy population, they're not going to live very long because they're not going to have a whole lot of food. So you can really help fill in any extinctions that you have.
Down on your dreads.
He's going down.
He will not be ignored. You're going to lose that.
No, he wants my attention in the worst way right now. But hey, especially when dealing with hybrids. He's my second hybrid I've dealt with. The last one was a koi dog, one's a wolf dog, but they tend to be more obedient. But if you can't, you cannot keep them isolated by themselves for more than like an hour. If they are by themselves for more than an hour, they're
social animals. They need affirmation and confirmation.
It needs a kitten. Yeah, it needs a house cat or a kitten or a human, a television or something. It needs something to feel like somebody's there with him. Otherwise, he's a little bit nervous. But other than that, he's the most obedient dog. I mean, 3 months old, and he's already better trained than most dogs I've ever had before. So, and that's at 3 months. He does that as he bites my arm.
He's got to establish a new paradigm for you.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to recapitulate just this stuff because we hit on a lot of things here, but obviously lighting and microbials, they go hand in hand, because when you stimulate a plant a certain way, you start seeing certain reactions. And one of the things that we noticed with our lights was that we would get plants would actually need more CalMag, and people wouldn't understand that. And I'm like, it's the recipe of the lighting inducing a certain reaction to plant that wants it to process things a different way. There's no one size fits all. Just because you grew this temperature, this humidity, and this nutrient dose under your HVS bulb does not mean it's automatically the right recipe for every other light source or outdoor. I tell you, I have the easiest time with outdoor growers. They said, we just brought the sun inside. Your plants are going to act like outdoor plants for the most part. So you'll be able to see the same things. You'll see it more clearly because the high CRI of our lights, you can actually make out the details better. But that's such a benefit. Intensity is great. Bulbs work because they were intense. But when you round out the recipe, because plants eat light, I'll let people wrap their heads around that. Yes, they uptake nutrients, but they eat light. So if you give them a better menu to choose from, they eat better, a more balanced meal. The end results, the same strain go under HPS and an LED in 2 different rooms with the right environments right for each lighting source, well, the plants will look like they're different strains at the end of the cycle. They won't look like the same plant at all. The colors, the height, the structure will be different because the plant's very malleable. It adapts to, it's called weed without reason. It wants to live. And that dog is going to do everything in its power to not be ignored, Steve. You're screwed.
Oh yes, I gave him peanut butter. I had to get up for a second. I gave him a peanut butter bully stick, and he still is more content with pulling up my dreads.
If you guys can't see this, I'm cracking up because I'm watching a dread suddenly, dance off into the distance. And I know it's Steven's not grabing it, and at least he's quiet about it. You're not growling and snarling while he's pulling on it.
Oh yeah, for anyone listening to the audio version, I'm sitting there talking and randomly different dreadlocks from my head are just being suddenly yanked.
They're moving on their own free will. I thought the dog grabbing them.
Oh man. Well, is there anything new in the California market aside from this potential HAD/high pressure sodium ban that's going on? What are the new trends? What's crazy new things going on out there? I know they're talking about possibly getting a little more sane on the regulation side in other aspects.
California government and sane don't always go hand in hand. It's like they go too far one way and then
I said more sane, not sane.
Yeah, okay. Sane-er, sane-est, yeah, sane-ish. We'll go with sane-ish.
I did live in California, remember?
But the rules are changing, but what I'm liking about is not just that people have to go LED. That's a few years down the road. Yeah, that's going to be a big deal. But I like the Design Lights Consortium, the DLC listing, where to get the rating, because we started off when they first started asking us questions about it. Spectrum King and a bunch of other lighting companies gave our input. And then when they got everyone's input, they came back to some of the people, and we happen to be one of those companies they came back to with a bunch more. And when we explained why we wanted a new standard, what the new standard was for, and our logic behind it, they took to it. And now we have this new lighting standard, the S640, and the efficiency, the U moles per joule, for you don't know what that means. It's a nerd ratio, an equation, but essentially the efficiency and the efficacy of your light from the plant's perspective can be measured. Taking a meter and measuring what humans see, par, lux, lumens, that's what humans see. That's what scientists 40, 50 years ago thought plants used, because they couldn't measure the spectrum.
And that was based on Candela, correct?
Well, even Candela's in the beginning, it's all based on what humans can see. Well, when you start measuring what plants actually use, and you measure all of that, then you start understanding the ratios and the weights of specific bandwidths with others. There's algorithms and ratios to it. When you get that, and you can now measure a light's output in micromoles per Siemens, U moles per joule, it's Avogadro's number. You could get lost in scientific, sciencey even facts, because a lot of guys spew them as if they're gift on them, but all they did was read the label on a package. When you understand the benefit for plants and for a gauge to rate if a fixture is worth your money or not, it gets really interesting. Even like with nutrients, yes, you need nitrogen, you need phosphorus, you need potassium, you need all the micros also, the micros and macros, you need all of them. Well, because something has that, if you have it in the wrong form, like for example, you mentioned earlier, having NH4 and plants not being able to break it down, not building up and creating an awful stink somewhere. Well, if you could have something to break it down NH2, and that's like junky food for plants, and it's instant uptake. So, cold pressed fish hydrolysate is one of the best things for plants, for terrestrial plants, because it facilitates their ability to uptake nitrogen. So when you understand how to measure stuff and what form it has to be in, like you mentioned earlier, down to ionic form, so it's easier uptake for the plants. They're not wasting time, energy creating enzymes to break those compounds down. You start seeing more success, and you start seeing how the puzzle comes together. Knowing how to measure what your light actually does give you, as far as, some companies, LED companies, advertise LED watts. That means absolutely nothing. If I take a 5-watt LED chip and I run it at 5 watts, it's going to be bright and hot for a specific period of time, then it's going to go off a cliff. If I balance them out and run them efficiently, let's say I run it at 50% capacity, something in a 5-watt diode, I run it at 50% capacity, and I put 400 of them in there, so I'm actually running 1,000 watts, but they call I have 2,000 LED watts. That doesn't mean anything. Your fixture is using 1,000 watts, which to me for an LED is way too much power. But just to show you that there's certain buzz phrases, quantum dot technology. Buzz phrase sounds impressive, doesn't really mean anything. An LED has an output, which is usually measured in lumens. Lumens are for humans. I know people say that, but you have to start somewhere. Then you see the spec sheets and you see its output at what milliamperage or amperage, what power it consumes. And then you figure out your power source and your drivers, you put it together in strings, run efficiently, run effectively. The whole point is to get a fixture to the public that wants to use it that's going to grow a healthier plant, better output of terpenes and compounds, but more importantly, it's going to last you for years. If you bought a Corvette and it was only good for one race, would you buy another one? Probably not. If you buy a Ferrari and it stays tuned and doesn't need to be in the shop every other month for 5 years, you'd be the happiest and the only Ferrari owner in the world that had that luxury. They don't do that. They're super sensitive, need a whole lot of maintenance. When you're in cost, your money is being spent to produce a consistent crop. You got to know your variables, your lighting, your feed, your environmentals, your soil, or your media. Once you've established what you're trying to do and get good at it, you want to stick to your sauce and then, baby step expand on it. You get it. You understand that you're going to save a ton of money and have a better finished crop at the end, which you can make more money off selling it, and you spent less money producing it overall. There's your win. I know that sounds crazy. Maybe it's a bold business theory, but it really it boils down to that executive summary. Work smarter, not harder. Let the plants do the talking. And once you study them, and you learn what they need, microbials, air, vapor pressure deficit chart. It does make sense. And I have guys who still fight me on that. And they'll say, no, man, you got to go at 75 degrees and 40% or you're going to have mold. I say, no. That's how you go under HPS for specific reasons. And those reasons no longer exist under different light sources. You have to accommodate what the plant wants. And I stick to what their natural environment is.
Oh yeah, getting people used to higher humidity is very hard, especially people that are very used to tent grows and used to very small indoor grows, because they're so used to doing that.
And there are strains that are basically systemically susceptible to specific pathogens. And I had a customer
You just don't grow those.
Tell me that my lights created powdery mildew. And I said, he said, I've been growing black lime, and I just started laughing. And he goes, what the hell are you laughing at? And I said, black lime. It is like the most sensitive strain to mildew of any strain I've ever seen.
The worst one I've saw was blackberry cookies. Was pretty awful as well. You breathe on it wrong, it gets PM.
And it's a low yielder, so like it's such a high risk plant to grow. But that's just separate.
Well, that's a whole other thing, and that's and I'm glad you bring this up. That's one of the biggest problems as a consultant that I see is that people they spend a bunch of money on a strain, or they go to a convention, they drop $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $12,000, and they're going to grow that shit because they spent a bunch of money on it, and it just not adapted to their climate, and they're fighting it tooth and nail, and they're dumping a ton of IPM. They're losing crops. And it's like, dude, just burn everything that gets PM in your climate. Like, fuck it. Just stop growing everything that gets PM in your climate. Grow, you got all these other strains that are fine. Stop pulling your hair out and just ditch everything that doesn't like it here. Like, it's fine. Like, it's no big deal. Chalk it up as a loss, as an expense, but stop fighting yourself. And I've had that battle countless times with owners or had growers. It's like, look, I get that you got a boner for this strain, or this is the flavor of the month. Your grower isn't going to grow it here, or your method of growing is not ideal or cut out for this, or makes it particularly susceptible to X, Y, and Z.
If you get up in the Himalayas, are you going to grow sativas? No. If you go to the Jamaica, are you going to grow, try to grow Afghan? You can, but would that be your easiest choice? No. But if you took a Congolese and took it to Jamaica and grew it, it's going to go insane. You took Blue Dream there, it's going to go insane. Colombian Gold, all those Marijuana strains back in the day, Thai Stick, they want that damn Miami soup weather, where you step outside and your clothes start sticking to you right away. Those strains love that. So if you're in an area like the prime example, Oklahoma, where it's going to get hot, it's going to be windy. You need hardy strains, and you need
Durban, Swazi, and Malawi crosses 2 years in a row now, and this is the second year. The Durbans are just crushing it compared to everything else because they're adapted to the climate here. They're used to the high heat, the weird humidity that goes from super high to really low and back again in 1 week's time. That they're used to all this type of climate, and they just absolutely love it. They thrive in the heat, but not everything will. And especially indicas, you cannot come into Oklahoma like you're saying and start, I'm gonna grow, OG Kush in your indoor room, sure, bud. But you put a field of that out there, you're gonna, good luck with that one, because it's not made for this heat. It's gonna foxtail, you're gonna have all kinds of stretching, it's gonna herm, you're gonna have all kinds of just as one example.
I was just saying that you're gonna have neighbors suing you because the pollen's gonna grow from your hermy plants all over. I
don't think they've wisened up enough to start suing each other over pollen yet, but it's coming.
Well, it's sad to say it'll happen eventually. But the recipe for a good grow. You got to start off with, where are you, and what are you gonna, what's your objective? Like you just mentioned, I mentioned before. If I was living in South Florida, I already know the strains I'm picking. If also I'm doing an indoor, then I'm spending a ton of money on climate control, And then I met a guy here in California that's up in the mountains, pretty high up, and he has a pretty funky recipe. He's growing some killer indicas, and his temperature change from day to night in his room. This is indoor grow, but he takes the mountain air in, and he just whales it in. He drops his temperature 25 degrees every night in his room.
Indicas love that, man. They'll love every inch
of it. When you're in week 5 of flower and you do that, those color by week 6.5, the colors are trikes. It's like, it looks like diamonds on neon almost. Like, that's how you do it. Give the plants their natural environment type conditions, what they've been doing for way before anyone tried to patent them. They've been doing this for millions of years. There's your success. Don't slap your favorite weed for nighttime and your cousin's favorite weed for daytime in the same room, in the same reservoir, same conditions, expect them to come out the way you want, because they're not going to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. If you're in a greenhouse or an outdoor environment, anywhere from Southern California across to just about Mississippi, unless you're in super high mountains between, which there aren't many of them, give up on growing indicas that way, unless you're indoors and you can create that environment right for them. But you'll do fine with all your hybrids and sativas. You'll do beyond fine.
We had a question in chat. What's the best high humidity strains that you've encountered?
Thai stick. I mean, it could be to the point to where your eyes are, if you feel like you're crying, it's so humid, it's just so wet, and it's just thriving, doesn't even get anything. I destroyed a Thai stick plant here in California because I had to put it outside because my system failed. And it, like you said, it was sunburnt. The weed literally turned brown and bent over. In a couple of days, it was over. It's just like, oh well. It was just it was a one-off plant I had just because it amused the hell out of me. It was like 7 and 8 feet tall.
Like putting a plant out on a 103-degree day.
Well, putting it outside in LA in a day where it's 110 degrees and like 20% humidity, it just gave up. But if I had to plant 90 degrees and 90% humidity, it'd have been perfectly happy. Jungle plant, something that wild Brazilian strain that does that too. It's disgustingly. You got to create South Florida basically. Just muggy, hot, humid, even like to the extreme of EPD, almost to the point where that might be pushing too far, and that plant's happy there. Whereas there's so many hybrids now, and so many parts of the world have made the same hybrid but gave it a different name. And when you start recognizing dominant traits of families of plants which are clearly linked and closely related, we'll call it, you find the environment and the specific things, like if it's indica dominant, your daytime nighttime temps should be a little bit more extreme. If it's pure sativa and sativa dominant, they don't like big temperature changes, they don't like big humidity changes. They're Goldilocks. They're like, I would even say my OGs, I call them the divas of the weed world, because they like it one way, basically. And once you know the way they like it and you get good at it, you'll crush it with them. But your window for excellence and error is pretty small. Whereas if you kill Blue Dream, fine, because that plant is really hard to kill. If you grow Blue Dream, I've seen guys get 1.25 pounds of Blue Dream, and I've seen guys get 3.5 pounds with the exact same cuttings from the same tray, just because the plant is that malleable. And if you understand selecting a handful of strains, not too many, a few strains that have similar diet requirements and environmental requirements, and then replicating them until you get them consistent, means you're onto something. You've got a system. The guys that make stupid money for weed that can replicate, they've done nothing but study the plants and look at them every day, not once in a while. That's a 7-day-a-week gig. Sorry. You'll take a vacation. And when you get to the point where you can hire people to work with you, you take a vacation when they're cleaning and chopping down, right? And you come back for the reveal. but the rest of the time, I know guys that have been doing this for a very, very long time, and some of them are very well-known, famous people. Every night, if they're not there, they're logging into their security cameras to check their shit and yelling at people. You got to get in there. You got to get to row 3. I've met some really famous people.
That's how I am. If I don't have all the control, I can't fix it. And it's because you'll have nutrient problems or pest problems that'll fuck you. And that's something else I've had issues with doing consulting is, people have to give up control for a bit in order to actually fix stuff, and then get with the program on what's working. If we suddenly switch the sprays to something on a set schedule and it's working for powdery mildew, and you suddenly want to, change it up, well, you might very well have a powdery mildew outbreak, but you need to be able to make sure that if you're going to make that gamble, that you can handle it. Maybe test it out on one of your mother plants you can afford, or that's about to be rotated out, or even maybe on a test room that's already old moms, or maybe, hey, here's a plant that we've already flowered out that we could just, hey, fuck it, let's just try it in here in a room that's already done, that we're not going to do any, we're not going to get any flowering tissue off of it. We're strictly pulling the seeds off. I don't care if it gets PM at the end of the day. We're just making internal seed production. Let's try it. That's the kind of stuff that you can afford to experiment with. But I regularly see people experimenting on their main production room. And it's like, are you insane? Because if this doesn't work, you just shot yourself in the face. And I see that happen over and over again. And
imagine this.
I don't understand why people do it.
Imagine an 80,000 square foot facility that in one grow to the next failed almost all lab tests for heavy metals and molds, because they thought they should try this new thing in their production rooms. I know I've known him for a decade.
My favorite one is compost tea, randomly spraying completely unstudied compost tea onto plants. That's easiest way to fail microbials. But people preach it. You got idiots out there like what's his name, Scatola Granola out there saying, oh, let's just eliminate cures spider mites, cures russet mites. You can cure russet mites with compost tea. That's the biggest lie that's ever been told in all of cannabis. Great way to burn a whole greenhouse to the ground and kill a whole crop. You can absolutely kill them if you make an IMO collection actually specifically target the microbes that feed on chitinase and chitan, but you can't just shotgun blast it and hope it works. It's not how that science works. It's not how microbial collection, microbial isolation. This is the type of stuff where you have a concept, someone gets a bright idea and then misconstrues it, puts out a bunch of bad information, and then now we're having a hard time getting an actually qualified, well-studied microbial product or methodology actually taken seriously by the Food Safety Board.
Yeah.
Because you have people putting out garbage information that is maybe on the right track, but they're also introducing E. coli and salmonella because they're not actually doing a good job of doing their collection or of their whatever. And it just, especially when you're trying to merge the religion of organic with the science of organic and trying to suss out what's actually there and what's just made up bullshit,
Even someone
which there is a lot of. And it's one of the things that also on the organic side of things is holding everything back. I mean, you have people out there preaching all kinds of nonsense, crystals and all kinds of other shit. Everyone knows it's not going to do a damn thing for your plants. Come on. Like, let's just be serious for a minute. There's nutrients and microbes and light and air. That's what grows plants, not magic and hocus pocus.
Not talk radio, not this, but
not positive energy and good feelings.
Well, even if you deal with
microcurrents
microcurrents and trace things that can be actually quantified scientifically, you might be onto something like the natural vibrations of the earth with grounding things will help a raised bed. But to get past the ignorance of people spewing inaccurate or false information, you got to do the homework. Now, if someone tells me, hey, you have to put this on your plant, well, I'm going to read about why. Not because somebody's homie said this is how you do it.
There's another good bro science, the whole peroxide for PM. Well, I'll just wash it off. That was good old Jorge on that one.
Forrest Gump said it best: "Stupid is, stupid does." But what stupid if your production run, if you've gotten decent yields, and now you're going to change up your regime, you got to do that in a test area. And if you're willing to risk, then maybe you do a treatment on one row of a room. But until you've tried, true, and verified for your location that this is right for your stuff, you are flat out plain insane to implement a change to your regime in mid-stroke. You're guaranteed something goes wrong because it's exponential, the variables. Which one did what? Well, if you change this, change that, change this, you got to test it first. I'm numb from people that bring someone new in and it's going to fix everything. And he starts changing things to prove he's somebody. And it all goes to shit. And then by the time they fire the guy, they've lost an entire facility's worth of crop that they can't sell for shit. It's off to the extract cut.
So let me just, on the other side of the point, the other big problem is a lot of times you have owners that don't actually fully commit to someone's full IPM regimen or nutrient regimen. They do 50% of it and then everything goes sideways. And it's like, well, yeah, you never addressed the spider mites, or you never addressed the X, Y, and Z that was that you ignored that part of the pest management program, and now you got a whole problem, or just as one example, or whatever, that's the reason why. It had nothing to do with the consultant. It could have, hey, they just didn't order shit on the schedule they were supposed to. And I've had that happen to me on grows where we've ended up having to, maybe not kill a room, but certainly fall behind on what we could have done if stuff had just been ordered on time.
I just dealt with a grower actually nearby here in the valley here in Los Angeles, and he had a really good run, but the owners had it in their head that he should get this yield, like this is what we have to make for us to make money. And it's like, well, that's not realistic for a first run in a new room by a new grower. We got to learn the room, dial it in, and by the third lap around the track, as I call it, now you're starting to hit momentum and start picking up, and that's what they're doing. But then what they did to him was, well, we can get this brand of cocoa cheaper. Well, that brand of cocoa proved to be so dirty and full of cadmium and heavy metals that they lost a whole bay that they used it on. Well, just to give you an idea, one bay was 10,000 square feet of crop failed, but banned for sale.
Oh yeah, and that's another big thing. You know, owners need to not second. If someone specs something out, don't go second guessing it. I had that problem last year. The idiots up at Reap up in northern Oklahoma. I'd spend 12 hours researching the cheapest thing that fit the exact specification. They'd go ask three hydro guys that knew nothing, and they'd turn around and order that instead. I literally had them quote out a Spectrum King quote, and then the next day had pallets of HIDs arrive. The level of stupidity you have with some people is just incredible, where, you know, and they don't and then the first thing they'll do is blame their consultants when they didn't order what they, even though you gave them the serial number of the thing they needed to order, and they ordered something else instead. And it's like, well, I can't fix stupid, you know.
You have the two extremes of people who take advantage of consultants. You're the scapegoat, you're the savior, or you're the savior, or the, now we've learned enough from them, we're just not going to call them back. You know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like we've stolen every idea we could from you. Thank you. Now go. Well, as many people with good hearts, there are just as many with bad hearts or more that get into any business where there's money involved. Consistency, appreciation for the crop and your results. Those are the people that get somewhere that last. You know, I've met guys like, you know, Tommy Chong, one of the nicest little old guys you ever meet. He is truly passionate about cannabis. Yes, he does it a joke. If you actually had a good talk with him, the guy's 16 miles from stupid. He is a brilliant, brilliant man, you know, and his son Paris is super cool. They know weed. That's what they do, you know. Willie Nelson knows weed. Snoop Dogg, you know, hear him talk. Snoop Dogg
Yeah,
can't
Willie's granddaughter does a lot of the actual day-to-day stuff for Willie's Reserve. I've spoken to her on 3 separate occasions. She's incredibly knowledgeable.
Yeah, but one of the funniest things ever was Snoop Dogg talking about trying to smoke Willie out and not being able to keep up with him. You know, you know, somebody who's been smoking weed for 30 years. Willie's the original gangster. He's just a country gangster. You know, he's been in there for 60 years. Can't even touch him. The guy knows.
Oh yeah.
People who are passionate about it, you bring something new to the table, you'll have your haters and your naysayers. But when you establish that it really does work and it really is a good thing, whether it's your own blend of nutrients, microbials, lighting, technique, approach. I mean, when guys first grafted plants, they thought it was like necromancy, like it was like mad scientists, they're crazy. When they saw it worked, it became the norm. You know, any procedure that's new, that you've established a new way of doing things, always gets hated on first. I mean, for LED lighting, the amount of verbal abuse and death threats I got 5-6 years ago was ridiculous. That same guy is using my lights now and saying how good they work. Where he told me to, you know, basically shove it where the sun doesn't shine and maybe, you know, go kill yourself basically, and not even just horrifically bad verbal assaults. And everyone's tough on the internet. So you get a lot of guys, you know, you have 1,000 people like you, and that one guy who doesn't, they remember him because he was so violent, so aggressive, so over the top that they're not going to forget the guy. Say, hey, I love your stuff.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
I've had me and a couple of other people that, and hey, I think all of us in the cannabis community have snapped on someone that have just trolled them one too many times, and I'm guilty of that, and I'm happy to admit that too. You do have some people that straight up just don't know how to behave, and sometimes it's the owner of a business, sometimes it's an internet troll, but sometimes you got people that just push and push and push. Thankfully, they invented this thing called the block button and the ban button, and you can just make them not exist. And if they want to talk shit, let them talk shit. But what you can do in return is talk education, and actually, you know, show people you can do X, Y, and Z.
4.5 years ago, a guy was going to kill me. Said it all over the internet, all over the place. Called here, hating on, screaming at me. So one day he called and I answered the phone. Here's Spectrum King. And he said, I'm going to, well, you know, all this, I'm a veteran and I know how to kill people and that's that, and, blah, blah, and you felt this and that. I said, so why are you mad? Simply put, why are you mad? I got one of your lights and it didn't work. How did you use it? Tells me, go, you use it wrong. Don't tell me how to grow, bro. I haven't grown for this and I know my shit and this, that. I'm going to fucking kill you. Where are you? I said, well, here's my real name. Here's my address. Here's my personal phone number. Get in a car, start driving. You're going to kill me. Let's get this over with. Okay. Just get your ass down here and kill me. Let's get this done. I got shit to do otherwise. Never heard from him again. No hate online or anything else. Because he wanted to vent. I let him vent. And then I told him what's up. You know, if you didn't drive if you got a Corvette and you floored it at a light while turning left and spun out and hit a truck, it's not the Corvette's fault. Right? If you have a room full of HPSs, you've been growing the same way for 20 years and it's 73 degrees and 40% humidity, and you put an LED light in the middle of those HPSs, it's going to suck. You're not going to get great results. Use the tool as it's supposed to be used, whether it's a knife, a gun, a car, a nutrient, a fish. If you know what they're supposed to do and you give them the tools that succeed in the ensemble, that's when the magic happens. A little bit of homework, true. But if you want the results, I had a guy 3 years ago, one of our first customers get 3.5 pounds of light with our SK600. People, no way, you can't do that with an LED. Do you want to meet him? Do you want to go to his grow? What? He'll show you. You want to go to his grow? I have 3 guys now. I have 5 guys now. I have 10 guys now. I got 20 guys now. Do you want to go? Here's his Instagram. Here's his YouTube channel. What else? Oh, maybe LEDs don't suck. Well, my friend says, I says, your friend a lighting manufacturer? No. Is your friend a grower? No. Then why the fuck would you listen to him? I'm not going to ask a master chef how to fix a transmission. But if he's
Oh yeah, no,
you know,
I recently had somebody who was growing indoor grows in a room using Canna Part A, Part B, and all that, come in and think they know more about outdoor soil acreage. And it's like, well, you've done a very specific way with a very regimented, coloring book simple, you know, you can't really fuck it up kind of way. And now you're trying to take something that has 10,000 more variables than the carefully controlled room, and just it's mind-boggling, and people need to understand that that you're trying to do 2 completely different things, and they aren't the same creature. They're radically different. And a great example of this in Oklahoma. I guarantee you at least 50% of the state learned what the word septoria was last year.
Wow. You know, I have a friend that runs 120,000 square foot grow. He is the master grower there. And before they hired him, they went through 3 or 4 growers, and they were, oh, man, this guy, man. And they tell me, well, this guy did a great thing. I went to his house. He showed me what he could do. I go, wait, you went to his house? You hired a grower who grows in his house to run a 120,000 square foot facility? That's not his fault. That's your fault. You want to hire somebody that's going to grow a big facility. He better show you 3 or 4 big facilities he worked at, because the economies of scale and process don't come from growing in a 12 lighter in your garage.
At the very least, a cut flower or some kind of, it doesn't have to even be cannabis, but show you've done greenhouse production. You know, before I did cannabis production, I worked at a place called Blood Good Landscape. We had 8 greenhouses. They were huge, 100 by 30. You know, I got that. Thank fuck I had that experience to cut my teeth on large scale nutrient, large scale IPM, and actually managing the personnel of something like that, because it's again way different than running 2 rooms that have 8 lights.
Well, like I had one commercial facility that's indoor grow, and as you know, as an old rule back in the day, in the black market days, we say if you had a decent worker, one worker could handle 30 lights a night. We'd run our lights at night. One guy can handle up to 30 lights a night if he's good on his shit. Well, somebody hears that and goes, I got a greenhouse. I got 300 lights. I have 10 guys. They can't get it done. I'm like, okay, an indoor grow, 300 light, 30 lights. Let's just, keep it simple here. That's 480 square feet. Okay. Or, you know, like you're not 4,800 square feet, excuse me. That's a good sized room for someone to work in. Now you're putting that same person in an 8,000 or 10,000 square foot bay and expecting them to cover the same amount of real estate in the same amount of time. Not going to happen.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I know a facility now that's struggling because they're convinced that's right. And our
Well,
people,
especially, and I'm glad we're on this topic too. That's another big problem. I see owners, they demand things happen on a set schedule. It has to happen because the finances need to be, and it's like, cool, the plants aren't done yet. The plants have a week and a half, and if you chop them now, you're going to literally cut off 60% of your yield. But because they pack that weight on those last 2-3 weeks, on those trichome head, that's when those trichomes are plumping up. What I love how Frenchie's analogy of, hey, they're apples, right? They might be green, they might be yellow, they might be red, but they have to reach that certain plump maturity size for that strain, and it's going to vary. Some are going to be small apples, some are going to be large apples, some of them are going to be, maybe you want to pick them a little earlier because that's when the flavor is a little bit better. You have to learn the strain or the cultivar. So, and it's not as coloring book simple. And hey, you know what? The plants don't give a shit about your schedule. The plants don't give a shit about bank accounts. The plants don't care about anything human related. The plants are done when they're done. And that's something else that's just, hey, it might need to go another week because it's colder this time of year. In the wintertime, you might have to add a week. In the summertime, you might subtract one.
The greenhouse guys give me shit, and I'm telling. Let's say I said this past winter, I go, yeah, it was a 63-day strain last summer. It's not a 63-day strain in this environment. It's too fucking cold in here. And he goes,
or even angle of the sun. What might be a 63-day strain in Jamaica might not be in Alberta.
Hell no. But it's a combination. Coming back to my recipe thing earlier, I don't want to beat it like a dead horse, but the right set of variables have to be, temperature, humidity, feed, pH, light intensity, it all has to be in balance to hit the home run. Your cost of production in winter, you use more electricity, but you lose less water because there's less evaporation, but the plants are going to grow slower. You don't expect the same yield. I mean, if you ask a greenhouse manufacturer that's built a bunch of greenhouses for cannabis, he'll tell you winter 15, maybe if you're good, 20, 25 grams per square foot. Summer, you should get 35. Well, it's not rocket science to do a little math to figure out what that means if you have X square feet. Well, if someone's bought a greenhouse and they've grown indoor, which is the equivalent of a summertime grow, and gotten those killer yields, and they expect to get that every single grow, you can only get that every single grow in a controlled environment. A greenhouse is not a 100% controlled environment, or you spend an F ton of money and you picked a good spot to put it. Except that the plants, coming back to what we said before, the plants tell you everything. When they're ready, what they need. If you're attentive, they'll pay you back. It might be 63 days this time, 67 next time, 59 the time after that, and 71 the time after that. But if the consistency in the end result, a good master grower, he'll tell you, oh, this is 67 days this time, but it needed 4 more days. But those 4 more days made a world of difference. That's what you talked about earlier, Stephen, about the balance and the trichomes and the plumping. 4 days makes a world of difference. If someone's going to chop it down 10 days early, it's like, okay, well, you get what you get.
Well, I mean, if you're chopping 10 days early, you might as well. You've just wasted an incredible amount of time and money and labor. Incredible amount.
But if someone's headstrong and they say, well, this is supposed to be done in 61 days, well, not this cycle. It needed 72 this time, and you just negated all that work. But hey.
Oh yeah, no. Last year I had a guy that insisted the plant, so they were a day behind on irrigation, and they insisted it had to start on Monday. Couldn't wait till Tuesday, even though the irrigation wasn't done. Put it in an acre, everything was dead by 2 o'clock. And it's just like, cool. Glad you killed 2,000 plants to prove a point. Why did we do that? This is just stupid.
That magnitude of, you said, you can't fix stupid. I mean, that magnitude of ignorance
No, and this is, you got people that blindly charge ahead and they don't understand. We're dealing with living organisms. They don't care about any artificial timeline other than their own biological one.
Yeah.
And that's the only one that everything else bends
Matters.
to that. And that's how
all
it
that
works.
matters. That's all that matters. Listen, watch, and learn. As the irony being is, my hearing gets worse, my eyesight gets worse the closer attention I pay to plants, because when I was younger, I didn't know enough. And as I learned more over time, I mean, just to paint a picture for those, if you're new to growing and you never grew before, I mean, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, if you got 2 pounds of light, you were a fucking rock star. You were like the man on the street. You were kicking ass and taking names, and you were the kingpin, and they were listening to you because that's how it's done. Well, that's what a rookie gets in a 4x4 tent in his first grow now with the right. If all he did was go to growweedeasy.com, it's a real website, and read somebody's recipe and follow it. And as simple as that, like he's baking a cake, he followed an established, confirmed recipe from a valid source. There's a whole lot of recipes from bad sources. I got threatened by another dude because he screwed up his grow and he was convinced it was a light. And I said, bring me your feed regime. Let's see what's going on here. Maybe I can help you with that. I have friends who are nutrient salesmen. You know, I know all the new companies. We'll work something out because we want you to succeed. The guy comes in, I read his recipe, and my friend Chad was with me, and he goes, bro, give me that. And he goes, what the fuck, bro? What the? And I said, yeah, he's got 3 NPKs. Yeah, he's got this nutrient store, this hydro shop dude had completely hoodwinked this poor guy. He was buying 27 bottles per cycle, and there were multiple duplicates. This hydro store owner had no soul, no heart, no conscience, and he was just taking his dude's money, can be pumping sunshine, and this is how you do it. I
went to a grow last year, and the head grower didn't know how to balance the pH of their nutrient solution. I was there for 2 hours, and I called the owner and I said, fire this guy. He doesn't belong here.
That'd be like a cop saying, what are handcuffs, and is this a gun? I mean, like,
yeah, where do I put the bullets?
Right, you know, do I have to spit these out? What doesn't work? How could you get the job? Who could hire someone in an actual?
Oh, because they're the out of state expert who came from the state where it's legal, and that gives them an automatic expert pass.
Well, I can see that. I was in Denver, well, a bunch of times, but I guess it'd be about 2.5 years ago. Yeah, it was January, I think. It was the beginning of January, so 2.5 years ago. And silly me, I said, you know, who's got some good weed? And guys very proudly, you know, put forth their wares. And I politely looked at it, and my buddy was with me. And he looks at me and he's like, what do we say, man? This shit's awful. I go, I was just say thank you, and you know, hey, I'm gonna just nice seeing you. I'm gonna go get something to eat, and
be polite, yeah.
And just going, oh fuck, there's got to be somebody here. Oh, this dude came from California, man. He knows how to grow. And I met the guy, and he starts talking, and I know why he left California, because he would never get a job here in the industry. And he talked his way into one there, but you know, he didn't last long there either. I heard a few months later that he was canned from that. And I've met some other guys that are generations deep, like the dude from Humboldt. I'm pretty sure he's the son of somebody, and your grandson, or you know, somebody that's been growing for generations. And those guys are the people of the land. They know how to grow outdoors. I'm not going to attempt to compete with him, but if I put him in an environment he's not familiar with, he's going to suffer just like anyone else, because he knows that world he came from. He knows the environment. He knows that humidity comes in at night. I knew guys up there that had leaf blowers, and they were drying their plants off at 9 p.m. at night with power generators, playing music loud, thinking people wouldn't realize what they were doing because it was too damn wet. They didn't want bud rot and mold. Using leaf blowers and hair dryers. And then I met another guy who was a genius. In Salinas, California, you know, it's lots of commercial farms and greenhouses, but they have that massive marine layer that comes in and hangs like every night and every morning and settles there. And he was like, dude, we were spending so much money treating things. We thought it was this, thought it was that. He goes, then I figured, why don't I just create some natural convection, but not underneath the plants on the tables, right at the top of the pot. And he ran copper tubes with aluminum fins on it with warm water that was warmer than the air outside. Not boiling, not crazy hot, just a few degrees warmer than the air outside. And that natural convection dried out the inside of the plants. And he never once had any mold issues or bud rot. He spent a lot of money on fueling his boiler, which was massive because his greenhouse was really big. But I thought, that's the kind of shit I want to know more of. This guy taught me something I never would have thought of. That's genius. And just because I was open to it and wanted to learn, and he was excited to explain it because somebody was interested in how he did it. He told me the whole thing just because I was fascinating. I'm thinking, why didn't I? Duh. It's like the little kid that walks up to the accident of a truck stuck under a bridge and everyone's trying to figure out what a crane and this, that. And he goes, let the air out of the tires. And the cop goes, the kid's right. The truck will drop a foot and we can pull it right out. All those adults were tripping on how to do stuff and get a crane and get a tow truck and a winch and all this stuff. And a little kid just said, just let the air out of the tires. And he was right. A solution to every problem, if you allow yourself to see it from other people's eyes. I solve a lot of solutions. My title is a solution provider. I didn't give it to myself. It was given to me. But the idea being is that your head has to be open to, and you have to be willing to see and accept, because you're going to fuck up. Train wrecks, I know them. I've been involved in them. I've had people try to take me down with their train wrecks, as I'm sure you have as well. And you have to learn. As I say, one of my favorite things is, going forward, I know what not to do. And that's more important than knowing what to do. Because if you know what not
Or
to do,
knowing what you don't know.
yes, but knowing what not to do will save you so much pain. You've learned it, hit your head hard enough to remember that hurts. Don't do that again.
Oh yeah.
Repetition is the key to success, understanding all the variables. And when you establish a pattern that works, that's why you meet these growers that aren't going to change your recipe, because they've been doing it for a long time. Are they the best of the best? No, but in the black market days, we were all in our little bubble. You know, it wasn't like you go outside and talk about it and pump your chest. Your little clique of friends that knew you, well, you were a provider for that network. And if you stepped outside your network, you ran the risk of being popped. So those who were brave, you know, let's just say I know plenty of nice people with arrest records. It happened. The world's changed. We can share information. We can be open about it, which I find awesome. So to be able to explain things and to have someone teach me something new in the process of exchanging information, it's a win-win. I mean, the past few years, so much good info has come out. You know, I went to lectures and heard so many people speak, and I heard some really cool stuff, and I heard some absolute buffoonery from people with 3-4 PhDs. And not wanting to cause a scene, I had a chance to talk to some of them later, and it ended up being a kind of a, how do you want to put it, a gentle beatdown as I proved my point. And they got angry, and other specialists came over and said, this guy's right. This point is wrong. That's wrong. You said this, and the other thing. Well, I didn't mean that. Well, that's what you said.
Oh yeah.
You're a specialist. You're talking up there. You said this. I wouldn't have said anything to you had you not said that specific point. You know.
Oh yeah. And you know, it's funny. I actually went to a talk by a gentleman named Eric Mather last year, specifically to troll him, because I thought he was the next Mowgli. And I sat and listened to his whole talk, and I realized this guy isn't like that at all. And I went and talked to him afterwards, and he thought I was just some dude bro. And we talked to each other for 5 minutes, and we both realized we were like the only other person in the entire room that could have some of the conversations we wanted to have. And we ended up closing out an after hours at like 4:30 in the morning that very same day, because we literally were so enthralled with each other's conversation that we could not get away. We could not get back to our hotel rooms because we kept going.
But
So
that's
it's funny how sometimes the people that you end up thinking that you disagree with end up being your best friends, or maybe not even your best friends, but people that you end up connecting on or learning from or getting insight from in some way that just totally changes the way that you think about something, or maybe you thought they were a very specific mindset that they're on the polar opposite end of, and you just had this, you were told wrong by someone else.
you catch a snippet of information from somebody and you paint a picture in your mind as to who they are from that snippet of information. Once you allow yourself to accept more information about the person, then you meet the person. You know, I met people I thought were really cool as hell, and I met them in person. I thought they were just fucking douchebags. They ended up being, they were just having a really bad day and they didn't know how to handle it. And I met them another time and they were like, "Oh, dude, no, I went through, my mother died that week." And I'm like, "Oh shit, I didn't know this stuff. I can understand, you know." But I've met some people who are treated as well-known authorities in a subject, and um, I wouldn't let them babysit a fucking dog, you know, after speaking to them in person. So some people write really well but speak poorly. Some people speak really well and write poorly. Some people are very charming and convincing. It doesn't necessarily mean they're always right. Um, Things I believed that were disproven, I had to accept and move on from. Things that I didn't know, like you said, knowing what you don't know. Um, I like to take as much in as possible, but sometimes it just doesn't sync. It doesn't gel with the ideas I've had for over a certain period of time. And it takes a while to go, you know what? That dude was right. I didn't get where he was coming from. It's not rare that happens, but every once in a while you meet somebody and they're just in a different wavelength, whether it's higher or lower or just, you know, parallel to where you're at. Um, there's insights to take from it if you allow yourself. I guess you call it that. The biggest problem that most men have is we're in our own way. We want to establish some form of social dominance and feel like we're important, so we don't always listen. Listening will change everything in your world if you allow yourself to do it. And coming from somebody like myself with a big mouth, it's hard to believe, but yeah. Um,
Oh yeah, you know, you're going to be wrong sometimes, and as long as you can accept the fact that you are wrong sometimes, but also know when you're
I'll be the
definitely
guy
not
going,
wrong.
this idiot said that. I was that idiot. Yeah, that's the one who said that. That was me. I'll
Yeah.
own up to my stupid, because every once in a while I come out with one, or like one of my good friends who, you know, also, but I'll leave him out. I won't throw him under the bus this way. He has ADD and he's thinking so many different things at once that he will blurt something out like Tourette syndrome and be utterly convinced he said this, but in fact he said the exact opposite. And he will fight with you tooth and nail and argue with you. And one of the best things ever was we recorded him. We played it back to him. And he goes, "I didn't say that." I go, "That's your voice saying it." "What do you mean you didn't say it?" He goes, "That's my voice." I'm like, "Yes, that's you." And he went, "Oh, that's not what I meant." I go, "Well, it's a bit late for that now, but you know, maybe stop, take a deep breath, and focus the thought if you can." Um, Learning is what we all should be doing forever. Anyone who's settled and thinks they know it all, they're done. Because you know, to quote the Big Lebowski, new shit's come to light, man. You know, there's plenty of new cool things that we can take and apply towards our little corner that we're working in this industry.
Well,
Um,
that, and especially too, look outside your disciplines. If you're a soil guy,
mm,
occasionally read up on the hydro and the aquaponic shit. If you're an aquaponic guy, learn about living soil, like the concepts, and it might not be a direct application, but understanding the concepts that increasing microbial biodiversity, regardless of whether or not you're doing it through aquaponics or living soil, will both get you similar awesome results.
I mean,
You know, it doesn't matter the method. It's
finish line.
the goal that you're trying to achieve. As long as you're aiming at the same thing, you can achieve it a couple of different ways.
Right. If I told you that I know someone who got 11.6 confirmed dry weight pounds in a 4x8 tray, what method and how many plants do you think he would have used and had?
I would probably say some kind of hydro aeroponic or aquaponic, not soil, and probably with CO2 and not organic, if I had to guess.
128 single cola plants, no veg whatsoever, in a terraced-based inverted V garden with a custom lighting system where we're designing for him. He got 11.6 pounds. How old was this person?
You know, in the 20s or 30s.
No, he was well into his 70s. And he's pissed because he's Canadian. He can't come here because of COVID. His wife won't let him leave the house, won't let him travel anymore. And she's like, no, you're not going. He stumbled into cannabis as a retiree, quietly for his own personal pain management. He was an engineer, and he figured out a few things, and he proved himself quite right. But the problem with his system is, yes, you get those yields, but it is unbelievably sensitive, high maintenance. So, you know, one person could not work 30 trays a night. One person could work 4 trays. So that's 32 feet by 4 feet. Well, if you have a 10,000 square foot facility, you need a whole lot of bodies to get that. Yes, the yield's there, but when I did the cost analysis per square foot and man hours handling everything else, as fantastic as that yield sounded, it wasn't as efficient as a deep water culture 6 bucket system that's getting you, you know, or your system that's getting you this comparable, you know, maybe not that big a yield, but if you get 6-7 pounds with one guy handling a whole damn bay.
Well, I can tell you that at Organic Innovations, they were averaging between 1.8 and 3.4 inches per day in veg all day long, every single day. Like it was solid. You had some strains that were pushing it farther. Now with this heat, we were having some that were actually breaking 4 inches, which was really impressive. But again, you're only going to get those speeds with aquaponics, hydroponics, or aeroponics. You're not going to get that with soil. It just doesn't. You don't have the gas exchange rate to support that growth speed, and it just simply comes down to that. Now, maybe in theory, if you could find a way to inject enough air into your soil zone, but how you could do that in a way that was evenly distributed would be next to impossible. You'd have to have multiple layers of air stones within your soil bed, which would be psychotic. I mean, you could do it, but it would be like a lab experiment, not a practical application.
It would be like the heat pipes used in my heat sinks for my lights, that passive cooling. You'd have to have heat pipes pumped into a wet tray at the bottom through the soil to oxygenate on a perpetual bubbler to turbocharge the roots to uptake like that. Yeah.
So on that note, we actually did a side-by-sides at Aquaponic source where we did dual root zone pots where we put an air stone with an air line in the bottom of every single pot. And then we did it against a control with none. It was a 3% difference. So unless you're doing a really big scale, in which case this gets very cost prohibitive, and the maintenance on that gets quite labor cost prohibitive. It's simply not
128 plants in a
financially viable.
But imagine 128 plants in a system that is so fine-tuned and so many moving parts that to keep it 100% perfect is a non-stop job. Yeah.
Well, so I've found that it takes, at least with the method I do, one person can run about 1,500 to 2,000 square feet and keep it defoliated, topped, looking good, trellised, and scouted for insects and watered and generally maintained. Now, you could, if someone's skilled, they could do 3,000 to 4,000 if they're seasoned cannabis person. But beyond that, you're really pushing it. And again, they need some kind of support. You know, they're going to need a helper, a couple now and then, and obviously harvest any kind of move. You know, is going to need additional labor. But in terms of strictly maintenance wise, you know, that's spreading real thin with people that know what the fuck they're doing.
I call it angry crab day when you just start plucking off extra fan leaves. You know, just pinch.
Well, you know what I do is what we've been doing out here lately is that, look, okay, it's fucking hot as balls, after a certain temperature. So, okay, we're going to work up until it's hot as balls and you can't work outside or in the greenhouse anymore. And then we're going to jump into the mom room or one of the flower rooms and we're going to defoliate with the whole team. So we're going to have 8 people or 12 people and it's going to take us 1 to 2 hours to just maul through the room and be done with it. And then it takes us 1 day every 1 to 2 weeks to just plow through the room and be done with it. We don't think about it again. That's the easier way to handle it. I know a lot of people like to put one person in charge of a room. That's insane. Just take your team, plow through a space, make sure everyone's on the same page, and just maul it and move on. You'll get an extra 1 to 2 rooms done per day if you just put everyone on the task.
The camaraderie and the laughter and the teamwork and the natural human competition will make them.
And people sync up. People will put people that have their strengths in the different positions that they're strong at, and put people that are weak at certain positions. Like I have a couple of people that can do 750 or 800 clones or 1,000 clones or 1,400 clones on a good day, 1,500 clones on the easy plants on a single day on a 6 to 8 hour shift. I have other people that can't break 400 or 500, right? So they're going to be on potting because they do really much better on repotting, right? So if you're slow on cloning, I'm going to put you on repotting. I need to have more people repotting than cloning anyway. For every 2 people cloning, I need to have at least 6 people repotting in order to support that labor-wise, unless I have a potting machine. So, if I'm scaling this, I need to have that support team. So I don't care if someone's particularly good or bad at something, as long as I have enough good people at the task I need to be good at. I don't give a shit. That's how you have to balance your workflow and your team. And this is where you get owners that want to micromanage stuff that don't understand basic workflow of plants, and it ends up with you can compound problems real quick.
Listen, if you have a lucky first grow and everything went just smooth, then now the outside person who threw money at this thing now thinks that's how it's done, that's how it should be. And then next time around, somebody dirty comes in, you got mites, you got this, you got that, you have management, you have yield, your yield is affected, your plant quality is effective, everyone's stressed, the plants are stressed. Now suddenly he's yelling at people because this is how it's supposed to be done. You did this last time, you did this, last time you did that. I said, last time we didn't have mites, last time we didn't have this, if they're not willing to accept that it's a living environment and that if you don't implement all the proper procedures, like you said earlier about your checklist of things they need to do, if you cherry pick 3 things you want to do because you like those 3 things, but there's 10 things in a list, you're not going to get that success that the 10 things will get.
What do you mean? We did this 3 runs before and we didn't get powdery mildew. Well, yeah, but you also ran different strains and you've completely changed your pest management program 3 separate times since then. Right. So please tell me what it is that's the same. The physical location's about the only thing.
Sad but true.
No, but when you have people that simply don't understand farming or agriculture, I absolutely could understand in a different frame of mind how that would make sense to someone that doesn't understand biology and agriculture. Yeah, I get it, but that's not what we're doing. and I don't understand why they have these black market people that think it's some kind of license to print money and don't understand that we're having to deal with living. Maybe I have a better understanding of it coming from the aquaculture / aquarium world and dealing with coral, a very expensive coral and $1,000 fish and all kinds of stuff where that was the only thing that mattered, and everything else be damned. It has to live or I can't sell it. You know what I mean?
That's this, how do you put this? Standing outside the sandbox and thinking that's how people should play inside it is generally not successful. If someone's an investor and they want to micromanage, they don't micromanage the stock market. They don't micromanage their bank. So why do they think it's okay to micromanage something they don't know anything about? The guys I find who are successful, like I know a guy who owns like 6 different businesses. He got into cannabis in Nevada like 4 years ago. And when I first met him, he didn't know jack shit. but he knew he didn't know jack shit, and he was okay with it. And he was going to find people that were going to show him, and he was going to keep trying until he found the people that did the shit the way that worked. And he finally got to a good crew of people, and he knows the system in and out. You know, we're like the same age, so, you know, life experience wise, he's been through a whole lot of things, but he's not the same guy he was 4 years ago. He was open to completely changing his own inner world and how he sees and does things, because he admitted he was a fish out of water in this industry. And he would ask all kinds of questions, and he said, I'm sorry if I'm being redundant, but I have to understand this. And it was like, I appreciate you asking again and making sure. Thank you for being thorough and asking to make sure you got it, so I don't have to tell you again and again and again and know there's anyone else. Now you got it. And now he's saying, hey, now I have to do this after that, and this happened here. And I said, not to pick on this location, but I said, your electrician he'd be fired from the circus. I said, this guy is an absolute incompetent clown. Oh, but he's a nice guy. I said, but he's a nice guy who's costing you probably $1 million of negative this year. And he stepped back and thought about it. And then 2 weeks later, I went there and he goes, he's not here anymore. But I had this other guy, and the other guy was way better, but he had his eyes on bigger fish. He was going to leave, you know, and he did. Then I got yet another guy. And I loved it. The other guy said, hey man, there's problems with these lights and this system. And can you explain to me how this thing works? Because I don't understand. I go, oh, no. You're getting DC voltage output from the back of this. You're not going to put AC. He's like, oh, and then what is it? And I said, no, you're taking 480 volt 3-phase in, but on this particular system, it's 252 volts DC. And you can't just randomly put more lights on. It doesn't auto adjust. It doesn't count lights. It's sending X current and amperage to this line, to that line, to that line, to that line, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to change this group to a different number of lights, I have to reprogram that module to a different current level. And he goes, oh man. And I said, here's how the place is supposed to be wired. And the owner said, no one ever told us that. And I said, really? So if I showed you something with your signature on it and dated, would you change your mind? And he went, yeah. And I went, here's your signature and your former electrician, the one I told you was a joker signature, on the plans that engineer Jeff and I gave you. Because I don't remember that. I said, I'm sorry you don't. I've told you about it enough times. Now that we have a guy here who actually gets it, I want to fix these rooms. So every couple of cycles, I go there and have rewire a room to do it right and put things in right. And now he gets it. But from 4 years ago to now, he's a different dude. He's learned all this stuff, but he was open to learning it. It's super important to be open to it. I would love to find a new control system that fits our world better. You know, there's commercial ag systems that are great for greenhouses, but for other crops. You know, I'm not going to take one of those commercial Canadian farm systems and expect to grow orchids. You know,
So here's a question. Let me ask you this: what are the different lighting requirements for orchids versus cannabis? I'd love to know that, just as someone who loves orchids.
Well, the irony of orchids is they're as different as species of humans. So they are really longitude, latitude, altitude specific lighting requirements. They're environmental variables. A company in Holland, I showed them they could get better looking colors and things, but they weren't going to switch because they're known as the long stemmed orchid company. And my lights would have made their orchids shorter and more colorful because of the intensity. There's an actual orchid growers group that got in touch with us years ago, and we developed a couple of small lights. And what we found out was that all the equatorial species of orchids can grow great with the same light as a cannabis, like really good. They'll be a bit shorter, but there's amazing colors. But you know, they're doing this, the spritzing them a bunch of times a day. But there are some other orchids which come from further north that are light sensitive. You know, they grow more in shade and on trees, actually. Like some of these orchids don't grow on the ground. They go in, and those ones, they're not getting full intensity. They're getting residual through other plant tissue. So you really have to almost pick a cover crop, no pun intended, but as in cover from the top, a bigger plant to shine light on and allow the light to trickle through for them. So there's no one size fits all. It's more drastic than cannabis. There are variations in the orchid families. And I just saw stuff I learned in the past few years because people asked those questions. And I don't know. So I better find out, because if another guy wants an orchid light, I want to know. If I sell him the orchid light for the equatorial bright ones and I kill his plants, when I found out what some of those plants go for, have you spoken to orchid people?
Oh yeah, no, orchids and
Jesus.
carnivorous plants, especially I've been really getting into Nepenthes. In fact, that was something that I've been getting into pretty hardcore is Nepenthes lately. Um, and big shout out to B Love for his awesome Nepenthes that he has going out there. Um, uh, they're really, I mean, they vary so widely, and especially with the carnivorous plants, that was something that I was about to ask you. Is that, have you done any work with anyone doing carnivorous plants, and what have
Honestly, I
you
have not.
done?
I have not. I'd love to look into it. If you have some links or stuff you can point me towards, I'll definitely dive into it because I'm curious.
If anyone out there is looking for a good resource for YouTube as far as carnivorous plants, there's a guy named Red Fern Expeditions or Red Fern River, Red Fern something or other, who does a YouTube channel, and they have an expedition company, and they do these hikes, like 2 or 3 week hikes where they go and they go to areas that have undocumented pitcher plants and undocumented, Venus flytraps and undocumented um, Drosseras and all the different ones in the carnivorous plant realm. And uh, he's the one who discovered Nepenthes attenboreae and stuff like that. So he's the one who named it and stuff like that. So super cool channel and really cool guy. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but if you're looking to learn more about specifically carnivorous plants, and they can be great in a cannabis grow, specifically aquaponics as well. Just keep them separated from that nitrogen-rich water. They have to be in a completely sealed pot. Do not put them in with the aquaponic water; they will die.
Completely different acidity
Yeah,
level.
they can't handle the nitrogen at all. They'll kill them real quick.
Mm.
But if you have some honeydew plants, you got fungus gnats or even flying rice root aphids, Drosseras are incredibly good at sucking up large amounts of rice root aphids per day. If you just want a general, especially if you're in the South, anywhere in the South, you will have to deal with rice root aphids as a normal pest that's going to be as common as thrips or anything else that you're used to dealing with. It's just going to come into your grow eventually as a hitchhiker or through your ventilation, some gap in your ventilation. It's one of the best ways to kind of keep them at bay and make sure that they're not ever getting established.
Wow. And that's
Well,
something.
because they're hyper attracted to the nectar on that plant. So the scouts. So you have to remember with rice root aphids, they generally enter your grow by a flying winged scout. Now they only produce winged scouts when they're in hyper population levels and are high enough to move to that almost like locusts. They go to the winged form when they're in too high population. So that's the first one that's going to enter your grow, unless you bring a plant in that's infected. So if I can kill him or make it to where it's really shitty for him right away, that's going to be your best bet. And by where was I starting off with that? Sorry, I'm just tired.
I didn't catch it. It broke up for a second there.
I lost my train of thought. Where was I?
You're talking about the carnivorous plant and how to get the.
Oh yes. So with the Drosseras, they love the smell of that sweet nectar. So when you have those initial scouts that come in, they immediately get attacked, stuck to the Drosseras or the honeydew plants. Drosera is the genus for the whole group of them. They get immediately attracted to them and immediately removed from your grow before they ever actually have a chance to get established. So I've actually planted them on 4 separate grows that I've worked at, along with a couple of hanging basket nepenthes in the grows to attract, fungus gnats, root aphids, and other things that might just find their way through the ventilation, and actively attract them through scent and actual attractant in a way that's just visually pretty to have around. And they're not they don't, spider mites and other mites don't particularly like them. They're not growing powdery mildew. They're not attracting all of the other issues that would normally be a problem. And they don't really pick off a lot of your beneficials either.
So I hate to cut you off there. This customer's been calling me for the past couple hours.
No, you're fine. It's quite late out there. It's after midnight in my time, so I'll let you go. Why don't you tell everybody how to find you, and if they want to find out more about BioCat solutions, or they want to find out more about Spectrum King, or if they want to reach you directly with their grow questions.
Well, if you have grow questions, just
or lighting questions, I guess.
Grow, lighting, they go in. And obviously, I get a lot of emails from around the world, but I'll answer as many as I possibly can. It's just Brendan, BRENDAN at spectrumkingled.com. Email. If you want to, if you have microbial questions, you can send them to me at Brendan at BioCat, BIOCAT.us. It's either company, I'm on all the time doing stuff. I'm pretty much on the phone or an email perpetually. I barely sleep because I have so much stuff going on. So it's a valid question. I'll answer. If obviously the price of tea in China, I'm not going to answer that question because there's plenty of Chinese people who can answer that for me. But if you have something specific about lighting or introductory grow, or how do I use this, sure, send it on in. I wish I had people to answer my questions back in the day so I wouldn't have ruined so many plants. It would have been nice. I learned a lot ruining plants, but I would have preferred not to have ruined so many. Just saying.
Awesome. And I'll make sure those links for both companies are in the description for anyone listening to this in audio format. I know probably 20 to 30% or 20 to 30 times our listenership is to the audio version versus the video. So we'll make sure those are on there. And then thanks a lot again to Roger at trueaquaponics.com. Him and I both work on the subscription service. If you have a commercial grow, be sure to check us out. We can get your nutrients all straightened out via soil or aquaponics. We recently added soil nutrients for that as well. And then we're also soon going to be expanding into pest management recommendations. So we'll be able to do pest management for you. So if you sign up with our service, we'll be able to do, for additional fee on top of the nutrient management, we'll be able to do nutrient management. So we'll send you out a package. It's going to come with a microscope and a couple of other things that you can identify what it is that you're looking at and send us proper pictures so that we can actually identify what it is that you're dealing with, and then give you a regimen to solve the problems that you're running into. Without those types of tools to properly identify it, I can't actually help you. So you sign up with the service, we send you a kit to get going, and then we help you from month to month, and then if you want to, we'll basically send you a recommendation on what you need, and then you can choose to purchase that or not, and that's up to you. We can go ahead and purchase that for you and have it, set it up. It just depends on which option that you choose. We can either give you either recommendation, or we can do all the ordering for you. It just depends on how much control that you would like to have as a customer. So that's one of the new things that we're looking to add in the next 30 to 45 days on the website. We're finalizing a couple of last things to make sure we can make sure all of our things that we need to help you will arrive on time. So we're working on a couple of contracts to make sure all of our fulfillment can happen on a schedule, to make sure that we can ensure that your problems will be met with a solution on a timely manner. But we're hoping to have some public announcements on that soon. We've had an enormous response with the nutrient management program, and it's kind of snowballed quite rapidly. There's a lot of demand for people that have aquaponics systems that simply just don't have that level of understanding that want to be successful. And it really is the thing that's kind of held a lot of people back on the commercial scale, be it growing lettuce or cannabis or anything in between. So it kind of gives people a one-stop shop. They pay one flat fee, they get their water tested in a custom managed, custom formulated nutrient management solution for their system. And we're going to be very soon expanding also into pest management as well. So It's going to make it really simple. You can pay one flat price and have all your nutrients and all your pest management handled for your farm, as long as you give us accurate information, obviously, and send out your water samples on time. We got you. So it's really going to help a lot of the people out there that are struggling with their commercial aquaponics system kind of fill a gap in knowledge that really is there in the market, and is really one of the things kind of holding back aquaponics. So we're going to help solve that firsthand in a low cost way that just solves all the hard problems and solves all the thinking and a lot of the what do I do, which is really what people run into and where they run into problems. And there isn't anyone else offering anything in an all-in-one solution for a low flat price. So it really is kind of a one-stop shop. So definitely check that over at True Aquaponics. Check out Spectrum King if you need lights for your grow. And shout out to Marty, who popped in there for a minute at AP Meds, his awesome aquaponics system. Marty and I are making quite a bit of headway on the commercial class. We're hoping to have that out sooner than later. And then we'll have some cool announcements with Roger at True Aquaponics. We have some systems and stuff that we're close to having ready. We're going to start offering system sales and some other cool stuff, as well as full greenhouse systems for commercial operations. So if you're looking for turnkey systems, we'll have those available before too long as well through True Aquaponics, and we'll be able to provide you, be it lettuce or cannabis or saffron or anything else that you want to grow, a turnkey solution with nutrient management, pest management, and equipment all in one shebang, about as easy as it can get, because there are people that offer all components of that, but they certainly don't offer the level of production and nutrient management and everything else that we do. So, and they have about 1/10 of the data that I have. So that's really the key, is normalizing and looking at huge data sets across a wide range of similar crops, and that's really what I've spent the last 5 to 7 years working on and mashing out. So thanks a lot for everyone for joining us. We'll be back again soon. We have a whole bunch of cool stuff coming. We have a cool guest on Thursday coming up, and look for us soon. Thanks a lot. You can find me at Ponics, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, all the different places. And we'll catch you guys again on Thursday. Take care.